Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. Okay, a lot different. We're stepping back into the Middle Ages, not through the glittering courts or the knight's saddle, but through the back alley behind the tavern, through a wooden door with no sign where perfume struggles to mask what's real. We're entering the forgotten life of prostitutes in the Middle Ages. Yeah, that side of history, the one your high school textbook blushed and skipped over entirely. You're not a hero tonight. You probably won't survive this. Most didn't. That's your fair warning. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I always love to hear where you're watching from. Drop your city and local time in the comments. Seriously, it's kind of become our little bedtime ritual. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Chung. It begins in the year 1341. The wind smells like coal smoke, mud, and something less pleasant you can't quite name. You're in the heart of London, or maybe it's Paris. Honestly, it doesn't matter. The sounds are the same, clanging bells, horses squelching through filth, and the layered voices of 100 stalls shouting stale bread and fish that should have been eaten yesterday. The people are wrapped in wool and worry, everyone is cold, everyone is tired, and everyone, whether they admit it or not, knows exactly where the brothels are. You've just arrived. You're not from here. You're about 16, maybe 17, with a thin face and a travel-worn cloak that smells like last week's river. Your shoes are barely holding together. You came for work, any work, but the baker laughed you off. The clothier barely looked at you. And the nuns, they took one look at your boots and closed the door. That was 2 days ago. You haven't eaten since. Then out of the fog, a woman finds you. Her cloak is lined with red silk. Her teeth are sharp, but she smiles. She calls you pretty thing and asks if you can scrub floors. We start with scrubbing, she says, and you follow her, because your legs are giving out and her voice is warm and there's nowhere else to go. The brothel doesn't look like what you imagined. It's not painted or glowing with lanterns like the stories say. It's squat and wooden, pressed between a butcher and a locksmith, both of whom pretend not to notice it. Inside it smells like boiled herbs and rose water. You're shown a tiny room with no lock and told it's yours, for now. A woman in her 40s, hair up in braids, eyes like polished stone, explains the rules. She's not unkind, but you understand quickly, kindness is not the currency here. You aren't a prostitute yet, not officially. First comes the work, washing sheets, fetching water, learning to blend wine with cheap syrup so it tastes expensive. You're invisible at first. The men don't see you, not really, but the other women do. They size you up with glances that say everything. Some pity, some amusement, one or two just tired resignation. There's a girl named Beatrice who shows you how to comb out your hair without losing half of it. Don't try to act grateful, she mutters, twisting hers into a knot. It'll only make you hate it more later. The house runs like a machine, oil slicked and gritty. The madam controls the money. You learn there's a logbook of who comes and goes. The city requires it. She bribes the watchman so no one asks too many questions. The law doesn't protect you, but it does monitor you. Brothels are legal, technically, and taxed. They bring in coin, especially near feast days and soldier musters. At night you listen, to footsteps, to moans, to laughter that sounds like it might crack into sobs. You stare at the ceiling and wonder how long you can stay a ghost before they ask you to stop scrubbing and start earning. You hope it's weeks, you pray it's never. It's 2 days. The first time isn't the horror story you thought it'd be. It's worse, maybe, because it's just nothing. A fat man with breath like onions hands the madam a silver coin and points at you. You're brought upstairs. He undresses with the casualness of someone peeling off boots. He says almost nothing. You stare at the wall. It's over in minutes. He doesn't look at you when he leaves. You sit there, naked and cold, waiting for the feeling to come, but it doesn't. Downstairs, Beatrice gives you a rag to wipe with and half a fig. That's the job, she says flatly. And no, it never really gets easier. You just get better at pretending it does. One historical fact here. In cities like London, Paris, and Avignon, brothels were not just tolerated, they were municipally regulated. The church scorned them publicly, of course, but city officials taxed the sex trade openly to fund everything from roads to defence walls. Some brothels even operated right under the nose of bishops, and a few were owned, quietly, by the church itself. Public sin was easier to manage than secret rebellion. Quirky detail for your dreams. Some cities painted their official brothels red, not the doors, the entire building. That's where the term red light district may have its roots. You didn't stumble into just any house tonight. You stumbled into a legal, taxable business, with rules, hours, and a very unofficial graveyard out back. And here's your first debate to sleep on. Did this system help protect women or just cage them more politely? Some scholars argue legalizing prostitution created a safer structure than chaos would have. Others say it gave cities an excuse to exploit women further. You're in it now. Either way, you lie back on your straw mattress staring at the low ceiling where a spider dangles from a wooden beam. You could leave, you tell yourself that, but even as you whisper the words, you know the truth. You won't. Not yet. Because tonight at least you're warm. And you've eaten, and for better or worse, you're not invisible anymore. The next morning comes with the clatter of wooden buckets and a woman yelling about spoiled wine. You wake with your back sore and your thoughts soaked in fog. It's not the kind of hangover you get from drink. It's the hangover of a reality settling deep into your chest like cold ash. The thin light leaking through the window slats tells you it's already mid-morning. You miss the first water run. Beatrice shoots you a look as she passes by with a basket of linens. You're learning, slowly, that no one says what they mean here, but everyone watches everything. You get up, legs stiff, and try to shake off the feeling that your body doesn't quite belong to you anymore. You weren't raised for this, no one really is, but you always imagined life would follow some kind of path, marriage maybe, or servitude in a noble house if you were lucky. You were not lucky. You think of your mother, just for a second, but the thought slides away like a slippery coin. No one here talks about family. Today you're assigned to serve food and keep the main room tidy. The space is dim, smoke-stained, with benches and low tables, scattered like a tavern, but softer around the edges. Velvet curtains, candles that drip slowly over reused holders. Mirrors, rare, expensive things, hang on two of the walls not because anyone here is vain, but because clients like to watch themselves. You find that out the weird way when a man chuckles and motions for you to wipe down a glass surface he's just breathed on. You try not to look directly at him. You're learning the rhythm of the house. Mid-mornings are slow. Some clients linger after sunrise, dozing or slipping out like mice. Midday brings a lull, broken only by servants and regulars who know they can avoid the evening crowd. The rush doesn't come until dusk, when the sun slips behind chimney smoke and men who've been paid for the week come looking to forget they're married, or poor, or hated. You can hear it in their voices, the desperation and the ache under their swagger. You serve watered-down wine and smile when asked. You learn quickly not to smile too much. Some take that as permission. One client, an older merchant with rotten teeth and fingers thick with rings, pinches your wrist when you hand him his drink. He grins like a fox and asks if the new one is available tonight. You shake your head, tell him you're on cleaning duty. He doesn't press, just gives you a wink and says, "Soon, I hope," then drops a copper coin into your apron pocket. It's the first money anyone's ever handed you directly. That night, the madam calls you into her room. It smells of lavender and sweat. She sits on a low stool, combing out a wig made of blonde hair you're almost certain didn't grow from any head in this city. She doesn't look up when she speaks. "You did fine yesterday. You'll do it again, but better. If you can sing, I suggest you practice." You nod. You don't sing. Not well, anyway. Doesn't matter. She tells you you've had a request. The man from earlier, the one with the rings, paid in advance. "A silver coin. Your cut is a fifth," she says. You pretend to be grateful. She catches the lie and smirks. "You're not the first girl to come through here with big eyes and no clue. You won't be the last." You ask, almost timidly, if you can refuse a client. The room goes quiet. She looks up at last, comb in midair. "Only if you want to end up on the street," she says flatly. Then, after a pause, "Or worse, picked up by the bishop's guards and flogged for whoring without a license." The last word lands sharp, like a nail driven home. There's a harsh truth here. In many medieval cities, prostitution was not only legal, but systematized. Brothels like this one operated under guild-like rules, and prostitutes were required to register with city officials. You needed a license to sell your body. No, really. Unlicensed women were considered criminals. Repeat offences led to branding, exile, or worse. And yes, the city kept the fees from those licenses. It's as if they said, "Your sin offends us deeply. Now pay up so we can pave the roads with it." Still, there's a fringe fact hiding under that civic order. Some women, those who could read or charm wealthy clients, rose to unexpected influence. A few became minor celebrities, even political players. In Venice, a famed courtesan once advised senators behind closed doors. In Avignon, a madam bribed her way into owning not one, but 3 properties. Power looked different here, and sometimes it wore perfume. As for what scholars argue, well, here's the twist. Some medievalists insist that brothels created a safer structure for women, a kind of organised evil that offered food, shelter, and some protection from rape and starvation. Others argue that this so-called system was just gilded oppression, a way to control women's bodies and disguise slavery as employment. What's clear? The women rarely got to decide how they were remembered. Back in your room later that night, you stare at the coin in your palm. Real silver, heavy, cold. You don't want it, but you need it. That contradiction wraps around your thoughts like a scarf made of thorns. You lie down and press your fingers to your lips. There's a taste of wine there still, and of the man's fingers, and something else. Bitterness, maybe. The kind that settles in the chest and makes a home. Outside, the wind picks up. Somewhere a church bell rings midnight. You wonder if the monks inside are praying for you, or cursing you, or both. You close your eyes, pretending you're somewhere else. A kitchen, a field, anywhere but here, but this straw mattress creaks when you shift, and the scent of lavender mixed with old sweat seeps through the walls. You're not anywhere else. You're here, in the house, in the job. And tomorrow, it starts again. Morning again and your knees ache. You've barely moved, but that dull throb in your joints is just part of you now, like the stale smell of sweat baked into your shift or the constant low buzz of tension that never fully leaves the room. You push back the rough wool blanket and sit up slowly. Someone's already started boiling water downstairs, the wet thud of logs into the hearth, the faint hiss of steam. A rooster calls outside, but it sounds as tired as you feel. You dress, fingers fumbling over the same worn laces. Your shift is cleanish. Your outer dress, brown and thin at the elbows, is only a little stained. The mirror on your wall is polished tin, warped and spotted, but you check your face anyway. Pale, a little hollow, not broken, not yet. Downstairs the girls are already at work. One's slicing bread that'll be stale by noon. Another is replacing the wine with something that's mostly vinegar and herbs, but convincing enough when warmed. Beatrice passes by with a basket of laundry and mutters, "You're late." You're always late by someone's standard here. Still, you take your place, grabbing the broom, sweeping through last night's debris. Crumbs, a feather, something that looks suspiciously like a human tooth. You nudge it toward the fireplace and don't ask questions. Today you've been assigned the front door. That means you're the first face clients see. You're supposed to smile, not too much, and flirt, not too obviously. It's a test. You get the sense the madam is always testing you. How you handle touch, how you manage drunks, how well you fake laughter without it sounding forced. The regulars walk in like they own the place. One pats your head like you're a dog. Another tries to guess your name. "You look like a Marjorie," he says with a grin, breath soaked in mead. You tell him he's close. You have no idea what name he heard last time, and honestly, neither do you anymore. Around midday, a priest walks in. Not a high-ranking one, no ornate robes or fancy rings, but clearly clergy. You recognise the robes, the little stitched cross on his collar, worn smooth from under washing. He doesn't glance at you. Head straight to the madam's door. The other girls barely react. You whisper to Beatrice, "He's a priest?" She gives a dry snort. "Oh, sweet thing, they're some of our best customers." It hits you sideways, the absurdity of fire. This world where the same hands that deliver Sunday sermons also fish for coins in a brothel's front room. Where sin is transactional, and salvation, apparently, can wait until morning. A little historical side note for your sleepy brain. In many medieval towns, clergy were not only regular visitors to brothels, but also active participants in how they were run. Some bishops collected rent on the very properties they publicly condemned. Hypocrisy wasn't an accident, it was the architecture. Prostitution was seen as a necessary sin, a way to keep worse sins at bay. Better to have paid women behind closed doors, the logic went, than risk corrupting noble daughters or causing rape in the streets. The term tolerated evil shows up more than once in the dusty ledgers of city councils, and here's the quirky bit. In parts of Germany and Italy, some brothels gave discounts to clerics. No, seriously, there's record of it. Whether it was hush money or just terrible math, no one knows. But there it is, discounted salvation. That afternoon, a new girl arrives. She's young, maybe 14, with a wide-eyed frozen expression and wrists thin as straw. Her name's Mathilde, though she says it so softly you almost don't catch it. She smells of river water and mildew. She doesn't speak unless spoken to. The madam brings her in personally and warns you, keep an eye on her. She's not trained yet. Trained. Like a puppy, or a sword, or something else you break before you shape. You sit with Mathilde later, peeling apples for stew. She says she came from the countryside. Her father owed debt. Her older brother's gone to war. Her mother is sick. You don't ask what kind. You both know what that usually means. You ask her if she wants to be here. She doesn't answer. You already know. The debate historians still chew over like stale bread is this. Were girls like Mathilde trafficked? Or did they choose? The records don't say, because no one cared enough to ask. Contracts exist. Oh yes, actual written agreements where parents placed their daughters into brothels in exchange for housing and income. Were they coerced? Or complicit? The paper doesn't tell, and you, sitting beside Mathilde as she slices a bruised apple into perfect wedges, you don't have an answer either. That night, you aren't called upstairs. A small mercy. Instead, you help in the bathing room, which is generous if you ignore the cracked tub and the water that cools too quickly. A client named Willem, a stonemason, asks if you'll scrub his back. He's polite, even tipsy, doesn't leer. You do it without flinching. You almost feel human, until he says softly, "You remind me of my sister." Then it's like a hole opens up in your chest, and you're suddenly very cold despite the steam. After he leaves, you sit on the floor and watch the water swirl down the drain, pink tinged. You don't want to know why. Later, upstairs, the girls are sprawled on shared mattresses. Talking in half whispers, they tell stories, not of love or dreams, but of clients. The worst ones, the weirdest. Beatrice once had a man who wanted to be stepped on while reciting Latin verses. Another girl swears she saw a nobleman cry because he couldn't finish. They laugh, but it's sharp around the edges, like glass under silk. As you drift towards sleep, you hear Mathilde coughing. A small sound, but ragged, like it comes from somewhere deeper than her lungs. You promise yourself you'll ask the healer about it. You promise a lot of things. You close your eyes and let your thoughts scatter like dust. Maybe tomorrow you'll sing. Maybe you'll be assigned to serve instead. Maybe you won't have to touch anyone. But maybe you will. And maybe you'll smile when you do, because that's the job, and pretending is survival. By your second week in the house, you understand that there's more than one kind of prostitute in this world, and the title itself is deceptive. Too flat. Too simple. The line between sex worker, housemaid, courtesan, servant and outright prisoner is drawn in water. Today, the madam tells you it's time to decide which path you want to take, though her tone makes it clear you don't really have much of a choice. You're not new anymore. That awkward, silent girl vibe has an expiration date. And now, you're on the edge of defining what kind of worker you'll be. There are two options, more or less. You can work the streets, or you can stay in the house. The girls call it free walking versus keeping in. Free walking means standing at known corners, near bakeries, outside churches or by inns. You're self-managed. You pay the madam a daily cut, but otherwise you fend for yourself. Housework means staying indoors, taking whoever walks through the brothel door, and being under the thumb of the madam and her ledgers. No weather, slightly less risk, slightly. You watch the older girls argue about it over cold stew one night. One says the house is like a cage, padded and safe-ish. Another swears by the freedom of the streets. You get to pick, she says, stabbing her spoon into her bowl. If he stinks, if he's cruel, you can walk away. Beatrice rolls her eyes. Until he pulls a blade or the bishop's men drag you off for whoring without registration. The room goes quiet at that one. Eventually, the madam decides for you. You're too soft for street work, she says, which makes you wonder what about you looks so breakable. Maybe it's your posture. Maybe it's your silence. Still, she sends you out once, just for practice. The experience sticks in your memory like a stone in your shoe. You're dressed in your best, meaning someone else's cast-off gown with all the mended seams aligned just so. Your lips are stained with beet juice and your hair smells like elder flower oil. You're instructed to stand near the Tannery Road, where the boys from the dockyard and visiting traders are known to pass. It stinks of hide and smoke. You're told to lean just enough against the post to look relaxed, but not enough to seem lazy. Smile when spoken to. Don't talk too much. Keep your coin tucked in your boot. An hour passes. Then 2. A few men stop, sniff the air around you like dogs. One asks how much for a quick one behind the carts. You shake your head. Only indoors, you lie. He scoffs and walks away. Another man seems almost kind, complimenting your eyes, asking your name. When you give a fake one, he smiles wider. Pretty name, he says. Too pretty for this place. Then he walks off too. You realise quickly that standing still in a dress, pretending to be confident, is almost harder than the work itself. A moment of history here. In many medieval cities, public prostitutes, those who worked outside regulated brothels, faced stricter penalties if caught. Some wore special clothing like striped hoods or yellow veils to mark their status. In Venice, they were required to wear bells on their belts to warn men, and to thrill them. There's even a record of prostitutes being fined for wearing fur or pearls, accessories above their station. They were both invisible and hyper-visible, watched, feared, desired and despised, often in the same breath. And here's a curious wrinkle. Some towns banned daytime street work, but allowed it after dusk. In theory, this kept decent folk from being corrupted. In practice, it just meant a business picked up at night, and danger did too. Women were often robbed, assaulted or arrested, especially if they worked alone. Some travelled in pairs, others paid male protectors, which almost always came with a crueler price. There's a girl in your house named Livia who works the streets by choice. She's older by tougher, and has scars that tell stories without needing words. She takes you under her wing during your trial shift, tells you which alleys to avoid, which innkeepers look the other way, which guards take a bribe and which ones take something worse. Her kindness isn't gentle, it's barked in half sentences and delivered with sharp elbows, but it helps. After 4 hours, you return to the brothel with numb feet and no coin. The madam is unimpressed. Not everyone earns on the first night, Beatrice whispers, handing you a cup of warm wine, especially not ones who still look like they're about to cry. You weren't crying, not really, but your eyes had that edge to them, the watery blur that comes when you hold in tears for too long. You choose housework after that, not because it's better, just because it's not out there. And yet, part of you envies the freedom, even if it's dangerous, even if it comes with cracked lips and stolen coin. Livia may be hardened, but she walks with her head up. You haven't done that in weeks. You learn the routine quickly. House girls are expected to be available at least 6 hours a night. You rotate rooms. You get breaks only when the madam says, and no, you don't get to say no, not unless you're bleeding or broken. And even then, she expects you to find a way. You clean your own sheets. You heat your own bathwater. You keep a rag soaked in herbs to mask whatever's happening inside your body that week. The madam provides sponges soaked in vinegar for contraception. They don't always work. Everyone here knows at least one girl who vanished for a few weeks and came back with hollow cheeks and nothing to say. One night, as you're scrubbing the floor outside the rooms, you hear Livia whispering to someone behind a curtain. Her voice is gentle for once. "He hit me again," she says. "This time with the buckle." A pause. "If I disappear next week, tell Beatrice I owed her 2 coins and that the blue shawl is hers." You swallow hard and keep scrubbing. Later, lying in your bed, you trace the lines on the ceiling again. You know them by heart now. One crack looks like a river, another like a hanged man. You've assigned meaning to them, like constellations. Maybe it's a way to pretend you still have control, or a future. Or that this life hasn't swallowed you whole just yet. You're not the kind of girl who dreams big anymore. You're the kind who dreams of soft bread and clean water, and maybe someday being able to walk down a street without feeling like prey. That's the job. You chose it. Sort of. Or maybe it chose you. Either way, it's yours now. You find out quickly that the body might be the commodity, but the rules are the real business. No one talks about them openly. There's no scroll on the wall titled Regulations of Flesh, but they're everywhere, silent and stitched into your day. And breaking them, even by accident, just comes with a price. It starts with Beatrice, who one night refuses a client. You're not sure what happened. Maybe he smelled bad, maybe he was drunk, or maybe he said something cruel in that casual way men sometimes do when they think you're furniture. All you know is she says no. The madam doesn't yell. She doesn't need to. She just stares at Beatrice like she's a dog that forgot its place. The next day, Beatrice is assigned double hours in all the worst rooms. No windows, mould in the corners, sheets that stink of months-old sweat. Quiet punishment. Brutal in its subtlety. So you ask around, carefully, what are the actual rules here? What can you do, and what gets you crushed? The answer comes in pieces, whispered in the laundry room past like secrets in the stew line. First rule, don't bleed on the sheets. That one's serious. If you're on your courses, you're supposed to let the madame and mamoa know and get assigned to side work or cleaning duty. Still, some clients prefer girls who are bleeding. Superstition or sickness no one knows, and if the coin's good, the madam might look the other way. Either way, if you stain the sheets, you pay the fine. Second rule, no public scenes. That means no crying in front of clients, no fighting with other girls where anyone can hear it, and no throwing things, no matter how awful the man is or what he says. If you must scream, do it into a pillow. Third rule, the church is watching. That one comes with a shrug, like everyone knows it's half a joke. But it's not. Local priests sometimes drop by under the guise of confession services. You're told to play nice, to say you're being treated well, to smile like everything is a charming sin that nobody takes too seriously. If you say the wrong thing, the brothel could get fined or shut down. You could end up on the street or worse, in a cage. In many cities during the Middle Ages, the rules weren't just house-made, they were municipal. Women in the trade were required to live in designated areas, adhere to curfews, wear regulated clothing and submit to health inspections, some invasive, some humiliating. In London's Southwark district, the bishop himself controlled the brothels and took a portion of their income. In Cologne, the city council issued literal handbooks for sex workers, outlining what they could and couldn't do. There were even rules about how loudly you could speak in public. Imagine that, laws about your voice. The irony? The same officials who enforced those rules were often the ones breaking them in secret. In Avignon, home of the papal court for a time, records show that brothels paid church tithes. Think about that. The church took a cut of your wages in exchange for moral supervision. There's one particularly odd rule in Florence. Sex workers were forbidden from standing barefoot in windows. Why? Because apparently a woman's bare feet were considered more seductive than her breasts. That's not a joke. It's written down in official legislation. Somewhere a man in robes truly believed that toes might bring about the collapse of public virtue. You and the other girls turn that one into a private joke. Beatrice threatens to flash her ankles every time the madam walks by in a mood. You laugh, but not too loudly, because Rule 4 is don't get noticed for the wrong reasons. Pretty girls attract coin, smart girls attract risk. But the unspoken rules, those are the ones that burrow deep. You learn to keep a cushion under your hips to reduce bruising. You learn to fake small giggles when you're scared. You learn that a quick slap on the cheek is nothing compared to what some men do when you flinch or run. You learn that sometimes it's better to go quiet and let it pass through you, like a ghost. And you learn the ritual of the curfew call. Every night, just before the bells toll, a guard walks the district shouting warnings. Prostitutes indoors, clients out, anyone found breaking curfew faces a fine or a public whipping. You hear the voice every night, sharp, nasal, bored, and something about it always makes your stomach twist. Like the word itself, curfew, is pressing into your skin. One night you see a girl get dragged off for breaking it. Not from your house. She's a street girl younger than you, maybe 13, barefoot and frantic. She'd hidden behind a tavern when the bells rang, thinking she'd slipped past, but the guards saw her. He didn't hit her. Not at first. He just grabbed her wrist, yanked her into the street, and called her a whore loud enough for every window to hear. The next day no one mentions her. She's just gone. And you start to understand what the rules are really for. Not protection, not order. Control, keep the girls scared, keep them obedient. Keep them from thinking they have any say in what happens to their own bodies. You lie awake that night thinking about the laws written by men who never had to follow them. How the system pretends to regulate you for your safety, but really it just sells a prettier version of fear. Still, the rules offer structure, and structure can feel like safety when the world outside is chaos. You start to lean into them, memorize them, use them. If a client crosses a line, you can cite House Rule 7, no bruising where it shows. If a guard gets handsy, you threaten to report him to the madam because she bribes the bishop and has pull where it counts. You learn to survive within the system, even as it chews you from the inside. By the end of the week, you have the rules down cold. You can recite them in your sleep. Sometimes you do, because when you stop dreaming, rules are all you have left. You meet her late one evening, just as the candles are being lit and the wine is beginning to boil. The madam calls her Mother Adele, but no one says it to her face. She walks through the brothel with the grace of someone who owns the walls. Every girl straightens when she enters a room. You've seen fear before, and this isn't quite that. It's respect, maybe. Warped and wary, like the kind you give a woman who could either save your life or sell your last breath for coin and never blink twice. She is your boss. More than that, she's the spine of the entire operation. The madam behind the madam, the one who signs papers and smiles at the bishop's men and makes people disappear when necessary. You hear her voice before you see her. Low, smooth, almost pleasant. She's complimenting one of the girls on her perfume, but her tone carries a weight that makes the compliment feel more like a test. When she finally looks at you, it's like being scanned through. "The new one," she murmurs. "Has she spoken yet?" Someone laughs. You don't. She studies you a moment longer, then says, "We'll see." That's your introduction to the woman who holds your life between her fingers like thread. Adele isn't cruel in the way you'd expect. No shouting, no slaps. Instead, she uses silence like a sword. When you make a mistake, like offering wine to a priest without the special gold-trimmed goblet, she doesn't correct you, she just watches. And the next day, you're scrubbing chamber pots for 6 hours. Still, there's something in her that fascinates you. She was once like you. That much you know. You overhear the stories whispered between the older girls. How Adele came from a brothel in Bruges, how she'd climbed her way out of the rooms and into the ledgers, how she could flirt a tax collector into lowering the city's cut, and how once she stabbed a nobleman who tried to cheat her. The madam says that one isn't true, but she never says it with much conviction. Over time, you notice how the brothel bends around her. Even the madam, who barks orders like a street vendor hawking fish, quietly defers when Adele is in the room. If a client gets too rough, Adele appears in the doorway with one raised eyebrow, and suddenly the man remembers his manners. If a girl can't work because of bruises or fear or something worse, Adele finds a job for her that doesn't involve lying down. One night you find her in the parlour, counting coins at a speed that makes your head spin. You're there to refill the wine jug, but she doesn't look up. "You're not as quiet as you think you are, Vito," she says, fingers still moving. "You stare. That's dangerous in this place." You freeze. "Sorry," she hums. "Never apologise for watching. Just don't be obvious." That's the closest thing to advice you'll ever get from her. Over the next few weeks you see her differently. She talks to guards, priests, bakers, always with a knowing smile. She can read a man like she's counting his sins. Sometimes you wonder if she ever wanted to leave this life, if she ever tried, and what it cost her to stay. A bit of dusty history for you. In many medieval brothels, madams were former sex workers. It was seen as a natural promotion, if you survived long enough and learned how to manage coin, clients, and cruelty. Some cities even required madams to be over a certain age, believing that older women were less likely to be corrupted by lust. Which is hilarious, really. As if years of watching men strip off their shame made you more virtuous. The fringe fact? In some regions, madams were legally liable for their girls' behaviour. If a prostitute broke curfew, the madam paid the fine. If she got pregnant, the madam might be forced to provide support or hide the evidence. That made control everything. Some madams became more brutal than their clients just to keep their houses afloat. Others became protectors. Silent mothers of dozens of lost daughters. Which one Adele is? Well, that depends on the day. She keeps the books herself. You know because you once saw them stacked in her quarters, thick ledgers bound in cracked leather. Not just names and payments, not just which clients preferred which girls, but secrets, codes, bribes. She doesn't just run a business, she runs an empire of quiet leverage. One night she catches you trying to sneak a heel of bread from the kitchen. You're not starving, not anymore, but the habit is hard to kill. She doesn't yell, she just watches you chew in silence, then says, "You think I got here by being soft?" You shake your head, crumbs stick to your tongue. "I was 13 when I came through a door like this," she continues, voice like silk over iron. "I spent 5 years in a brothel in Flanders. My madam beat men at me. My clients spat on me, and one day I woke up and realised I could either keep being the coin or learn how to collect it." She doesn't smile, she doesn't need to. She hands you another piece of bread before she walks away. That night, you don't cry. You thought you might. You've done it before, quietly, into a pillow or a tub of cold water. But not tonight. Tonight, you lie on your mattress and imagine being that strong, that untouchable. You picture yourself in fine shoes and velvet, whispering into the ear of a guard who owes you favours. You imagine not needing to fear the next knock at the door. It's a dangerous dream, but it warms you in a way the blanket never does. Later that week, Adele has a girl thrown out. Not punished, not reassigned. Gone. Her name was Colleen. She stole from a client a jewelled ring, stupid thing, probably worth more than her life. The client returned the next night furious. Adele didn't argue. She summoned Colleen, asked if it was true. The girl lied. Adele nodded, turned and said, "Escort her out. No dramatics, no second chances." Beatrice mutters later, "She didn't even get to grab her shoes." And you think, not for the first time, that this house runs more like a kingdom than a business. And Adele, she is its queen, crownless, merciless, maternal if the mood strikes. You wonder which version of her you'll become if you live long enough. Morning breaks with a damp chill, the kind that seeps into your bones before you're even out of bed. Someone left the window cracked, and a low mist curls in like it owns the place. You pull your shift tighter around your shoulders and shuffle down to the washroom, stepping over a half-drunk girl sprawled across the hallway floor. Her name is Solène, and she's been drinking since last night's final bell. You nudge her lightly with your foot. She groans, doesn't move, you let her be. Today, Beto, the madam assigns you to preparation duty, which sounds vaguely respectable until you realise it means full-body cleaning. Yours and others. You spend the next hour hauling water from the communal pump, heating copper pots over the hearth and filling up 2 tin basins upstairs. The rooms don't have plumbing, obviously, and bathing is reserved for rare days when a client pays extra for it, or when someone has bled through their linens. Today, you're just prepping for what's been charmingly dubbed a special request. You learn not to ask questions about those. You start with yourself. The water is still cooling by the time you strip. You step in and lower yourself slowly, teeth gritted. It stings. Your thighs, your hips, the new bruises on your rib from where a client gripped too hard in his sleep. You rub your skin raw with lye soap and herbs that smell like dried lemon peel and dirt. The room fogs up with steam and wood smoke. For a moment, it almost feels like a ritual, like you're shedding something invisible, or trying to. Then comes the painting. You dry off, towel as coarse as a fishing net, and wrap yourself in the one halfway clean robe you own. Beatrice is already waiting in the mirror room. She's got the rouge box open and a wet cloth laid across her lap. Without a word, she gestures for you to sit. "Look up," she mutters. You obey. She applies the rouge in sharp, practiced circles, cheeks, then lips. Not too red. You're not a tavern girl. Men want colour but not heat, she explains. If your face says yes before they ask, they get bored. You have to look just uncomfortable enough to make them feel powerful. You blink at her. That's horrifying. She shrugs. It works. She moves onto your hair, combing it out with a bone pick, then oiling the ends with something that smells faintly like rosemary and old honey. A few strands fall loose, curling against your cheek. She leaves them there. Softens the jaw, she says. Then come the ribbons. Beatrice ties 2 into your hair just at the back, 1 red, 1 white. That tells them you're new, she says. But not too new, it's like branding cattle. Helps them feel like they're choosing something fresh. You want to throw the ribbons into the fire. Instead, you nod and thank her. This, you realise, is the work. Not the sex, not the coin, the performance. The endless labour of constructing a version of yourself someone else wants to consume. And every detail, every drop of perfume, every bow tied at just the right tilt is part of the illusion. Historically speaking, medieval sex workers were masters of image manipulation. Contrary to what most people assume, many didn't work naked, or even half-dressed. Clothing was crucial. A carefully chosen bodice, a ribbon colour, even the way a shawl was folded could tell a client your rank, your specialty, your availability. In some brothels, women wore uniforms dictated by the city, red gowns or striped cloaks, designed to both identify and control them. But in private houses, the girls curated their appearance like armour. And yes, perfume played a role. When you rarely bathed and lived in a city where sewage ran down the middle of the street, smelling good was practically alchemy. Girls steeped herbs in vinegar, washed their mouths with mint-soaked cloths, and burned rosemary and juniper to smoke the room. One infamous madam in Florence reportedly made her girls chew cloves before kissing clients. Clean teeth meant high coin. Today your scent is rosewater and cinnamon oil. You don't hate it, you just don't recognise it. It doesn't smell like you. Beatrice finishes with a final dab of colour on your cheeks and steps back to admire her work. "You'll do," she says. "Just don't make that face." "What face?" "That one where you look like you're about to bite someone." You blink, then laugh. A little. The sound startles you. Later, you're assigned to the front room, not for clients this time, but to assist with the midday meal. You slice pears and arrange them on wooden platters next to chunks of sharp cheese and half-dried meat. There's no cutlery. Clients eat with their fingers or knives they bring themselves. You always make a note of the men who bring their own blades. It says something. A client calls you over. You've seen him before, one of the quiet ones. He asks your name. You tell him the fake one, Celeste. You've been using it more lately. It feels like a second skin, something to hide behind. "You're prettier today," he says, chewing a bit of fruit. "That changed." You smile, soft and rehearsed. "Just cleaner, maybe." He laughs and gestures for you to sit. You do, eyes lowered, fingers folded neatly in your lap. He tells you about his farm, his wife, his sick child. You nod in the right places. It's almost like a prayer, this ritual of false connection. And when he finally leans in and asks, "Do you work upstairs?" You already know how to answer. "Tonight," you say, "if you ask for me." He does. You go upstairs an hour later and find yourself scrubbing your face clean of the paint Beatrice applied. You can't explain it. Something about this man, the quiet, the sadness, makes the costume feel wrong. You work anyway. You say the lines, you smile, but afterward, you lie there beside him and think, not for the first time, about who you are without the ribbons, the rouge, the name. The open debate among scholars, one that will probably never be settled, is whether medieval prostitutes were empowered by their ability to perform identity, or whether they were simply erased by it. Did the costume give them agency, or did it replace their real selves entirely? You can't answer that. Not tonight. All you know is, when the client leaves and the room goes quiet again, you look at your reflection in the cracked mirror, and for a second you miss the girl who didn't know how to be beautiful. The sound of the door creaking open late at night is familiar now, so familiar you no longer flinch. Sometimes you even know who it is before you see their face. Heavy boots, likely a guard or a Hudmith. Soft-soled shoes that barely make a sound? Someone with money or something to hide. There are footsteps tonight, measured, careful. A brief pause in the hallway, then the knock. You're already dressed in the light blue shift the madam said, brings out your eyes. You light the single candle in the room, turn just slightly toward the doorway, and arrange your hair the way Beatrice taught you. A little must, a little perfect. Everything about this moment is curated. Because now you understand it's not just about selling the act, it's about convincing yourself you're in control of it. He enters with his head low, no cloak, plain tunic, not too clean, not too dirty. You don't recognise him, but there's something about the way he avoids your gaze that suggests he's been here before, just not to you. You say nothing at first. Wait. He doesn't approach, just lingers by the door. You're used to hesitation. Men who talk big in the taverns but shrink the second you meet their eyes. But this man, he looks haunted. After a pause, he says, "Do you talk?" You nod. "If you want me to." His shoulders sag like someone set down a heavy bag on them. "Then that's all I want tonight." So you talk. It's strange at first, filling the silence with words. You tell him about the bread from the market that's always stale, the fat alley cat Beatrice keeps feeding despite her threats to drown it. You tell him about a dream you had last week where the entire brothel floated down the river like a ship, and Adele was the captain screaming about taxes. You even laugh a little. Not for him, for you. Because laughter reminds you that your throat still works for something other than performance. Eventually he sits. He doesn't touch you. Just listens, nodding quietly, sipping the wine you poured but barely tasting it. After a long silence, he mutters, "You don't belong here." You almost laugh again. That's what they all say, right before they undo their belt. But he doesn't. He just sighs. "My wife died, a month ago. I thought I needed something, but now I'm here and you're just a girl. The word stings somehow, not because it's untrue. Because it is. You don't answer him, you just pour more wine and say, "She must have been loved then." He nods, his eyes glisten, and for the next hour, the two of you sit in silence, broken only by the clink of pottery and the hum of wind against the shutters. You never see him again. Here's the thing they don't tell you about this job. It's not just about the act. It's not even mostly about the act. Most nights, what the men come for is something softer, something stranger, company, listening, the illusion that someone gives a damn. You become a confessor, a mother, a priest, a ghost of someone they loved or hated or lost. Historically, this is where the lines blur. In medieval records, many brothel clients weren't anonymous. They came regularly, they stayed longer. Some even paid retainers for exclusive access. In Avignon, one wealthy widow paid a sex worker just to braid her hair and sing to her each week. There were men who visited the same girl every Friday, bringing fish or coins or tokens of affection, and there were plenty who fell in love, or thought they did. And that's the fringe fact of the night. Love was not banned in brothels. In fact, some brothel contracts included clauses warning girls not to get too close to their clients. Love complicated the ledger. If a girl started giving discounts, or, worse, serving one man for free, she was cheating the house. So yes, girls were punished for loving, for softness, for hope. Still, hope sneaks in. You hear stories. A girl who ran away with a merchant who left behind everything and sailed for Bruges. Another who married a stonemason and now runs a bakery far outside the city walls. These stories feel like fairy tales, but Beatrice swears she knew one of them. Ruth, she says, with the curly hair, gone in a blink, left a note in rosewater ink. I cried for a week. You believe her. Or maybe you just want to. But for everyone that escapes, there are 10 more who try and fail. A girl named Anna once tried to run, didn't even make it past the city gates. The guards dragged her back by her hair, and the madam made her clean the privy for a month. She never smiled again. Not once, not even when Selene made that ridiculous joke about the bishop's mole looking like a second nose. And yet the idea lingers. You wonder what it would be like to be chosen, not just for a night, but for good. To be someone's first choice, not their secret. It's a dangerous daydream. But it visits you anyway, curling up beside you like a cat and whispering that maybe, there's more than this. One evening, you overhear a client asking Beatrice if she has a lover. She laughs. Of course I do, 15 of them. They all pay for the privilege. Later, she tells you, never let them know what you really want. Not even the kind ones. Especially not the kind ones. Kindness is a leash with a nicer buckle. And you start to believe her. Because the kind ones leave, and the cruel ones come back. And the only constant is the candlelight and the creak of the stairs and the sound of the latch sliding shut at the end of the night. Still, you paint your face, you dress in borrowed silk. You smile when asked, and sometimes when a client asks for just talking, you tell stories that aren't quite true, about a village that never existed, about a mother who sang to you, about a boy who gave you a carved bird before going to war, and in those moments you almost believe you're someone else. By the time you've been in the house a full month, you start to notice just how tightly the world runs on coin, not just for food or wine or candles, but for permission to exist. And the brothel? It is an ecosystem built entirely around the movement of money. Every interaction, every touch, every glance, every breath has a cost, and nothing escapes the ledger, not even silence. The madam keeps 2 sets of books. You find this out by accident, catching a glimpse when she leaves her office door cracked while arguing with the supplier. One ledger is for show, neatly organised, ready for the city clerk or the bishop's man. The other is chaos, smudged ink, crossed out names, symbols you don't recognise, a shadow economy hidden in plain sight. That's the real brothel, numbers that don't match and coin that vanishes through invisible hands. The money flows in more directions than you'd imagined. Clients pay for services, sure, but also for secrecy, for priority, for preferences. Some request songs, others want bread baked that day, not yesterday. One man pays extra to never be spoken to, and you see none of that. Your cut is fixed, 1/5 of whatever the madam charges. Some nights that's enough to fill your pouch with copper coins and silver shavings. Other nights you leave with nothing but bruises and a crust of bread. There are fees, of course. Soap costs coin, perfume costs coin. Ruining a shift in the act costs coin, and don't even think about taking a day off. That's charge too. You begin to understand that you're not just working in the system, you are the system. Your body is revenue, your voice is advertisement. Even your name, Celeste, the one you borrowed for safety, becomes a brand. Clients ask for you, but now they ask for Celeste like she's real, like she isn't just scaffolding over your tired, aching bones. And when they do, your value goes up. That's when the taxes come. The first time you see the taxman, you think he's a client. He's clean, well-fed, with a dark green coat that probably cost more than your life. But he doesn't flirt, doesn't leer. He speaks directly to Adele and the madam, counts the coins handed to him, and makes notes in a small leather-bound journal. After he leaves, there's the tension in the room. The girls stop whispering. Beatrice curses under her breath. You ask her what's wrong. Back taxes, she mutters. They've raised the levy again, 2% more for moral oversight. What the hell is moral oversight? Is it the priest that smells like gin? Turns out the city, like many medieval cities, relies heavily on its sex trade for income. Prostitution is taxed, regulated and squeezed dry. In London's Southwark district, brothel income helped fund the upkeep of roads, bridges and even churches. In Avignon during the papal years, some of the finest cathedral repairs were financed, ironically, by the work of women like you. And here's a strange truth. Brothels sometimes paid more tax than taverns or mills. Why? Because vice was profitable. Sin, it turns out, is easier to quantify than virtue. There's even a record from Venice that lists brothel taxes alongside fish markets and bakeries, no special category, just another commodity. But here's the part that really sits in your gut like a stone. Despite being one of the most heavily taxed populations, sex workers had virtually no legal recourse. If you were robbed, too bad. If a client beat you, maybe someone would care if he wasn't wealthy. If the brothel refused to pay you your share, good luck. You asked the madam once why girls like you are taxed like merchants, but treated like stray dogs. She shrugs. Because you don't vote, you don't marry, you don't own land, you don't count. Later that night, Beatrice says, "We pay for our own erasure. That's the trick. The system makes us build the gallows and then charges us rent to hang from them." It's not all hopeless, though. Girls learn to play the game. One of them, Lisette, has been stashing coin for nearly a year. Hides it inside a hollowed-out floorboard beneath her mattress. She shows you once, whispering, "I'm leaving next spring. I've got a cousin in Marseille. He runs a boarding house. I'll scrub floors, beg if I have to, but I'm not dying here." You want to believe her. You do, but you've heard that story before. From Ruth, from Anna, from the girl whose name no one remembers now. Still, you start hiding coin too. You put a copper here, a silver there, wrapped in cloth, tucked behind the wood panel near the stairs. It's not much yet, but it feels like something. Like a hand on the wall when the floor gives out, and then there are the bribes. Guards must be paid. Not for protection, they won't lift a finger if you're attacked, but for silence. So they'll pretend not to see the underage girl in the back room, or forget the curfew violation, or overlook the bruises on your neck. They don't come with their hands out. They come with questions like, "How's business this week?" And if the purse doesn't jingle right, they suddenly remember the laws they're supposed to enforce. You once thought the church was above this. You don't anymore. One priest visits every Thursday like clockwork. He doesn't take girls upstairs, he just sits in the parlour with Adele sipping warm wine and murmuring Latin. You asked her what he wants. "He blesses the building," she said, deadpan, "so God doesn't smite us all with fire and boils." There's a scholarly debate about this. Did the church's involvement in brothels amount to hypocrisy or pragmatism? Some argue that tolerating and taxing prostitution allowed the church to maintain public order while privately curbing more violent sins. Others insist it was pure exploitation, righteousness turned into revenue. You don't have the luxury of theory. You have bruises and copper coins and a tally in the madam's ledger that always seems to come up short. And yet, in this strange, twisted economy, there's something steady, predictable. You know how much your work is worth. You know how many clients it takes to eat meat instead of gruel. You know the price of perfume and the weight of a silver coin in your palm. And in a world where nothing else is yours, not your body, not your name, not even your bed, that knowledge starts to feel like power. Maybe not the kind that gets you free, but the kind that lets you survive. You wake before the bell today, before the footsteps and the water buckets and the smells of boiled herbs and burned bread. The sky outside is grey, neither night nor morning, and the light filtering through the cracks in the shutters is dull and soft, like a tired sigh. You roll onto your back, listening to the house breathe, floorboards creaking under sleep-heavy steps, someone coughing through the wall, scrape of a stool dragging across the floor downstairs. These are your mornings now. No roosters, no fields, just the quiet orchestra of other people's exhaustion. You reach for your shift. It's cold against your skin. You've learned to dress in layers, not for warmth, but for modesty during the shuffle to the washroom. Modesty, now there's a joke. There's nothing modest about living in a house where walls are paper thin and your body is more public than a butcher's slab. But even now you hold on to small scraps of dignity. A laced collar, a clean petticoat, the way you twist your hair before breakfast, control when you can get it. Today you're not on client duty. You're assigned to wardrobe. It sounds fancy, like you'll be measuring gowns and brushing silks, but really it just means mending the clothes everyone else wore to pieces last week. You head to the back room, where the garments are hung like drying fish, limp and tired and heavy with sweat. A few are truly beautiful, fine brocade, beaded collars, satins that shimmer even in the candlelight, but most are patched beyond recognition. They don't belong to anyone, not really. The girls tread and share, dressing up like dolls for rent, and you try not to think about how many hands and mouths have touched each one. There's a red gown hanging by itself. You've never worn it. No one has in weeks. It's reserved for festival days or noble clients. It has tiny pearls sewn along the bodice and a slit up one side that leaves little to the imagination. Beatrice once said it was cursed. Every girl who wore it ended up bruised or crying. You don't believe in curses, but you still haven't tried it on. You spend the morning re-sewing a hem and tightening a corset string so frayed it snaps when you tug it too hard. Your fingers cramp, needle slipping. You suck on the blood from your prick thumb and keep working. That's the rule. Don't waste time. If your hands aren't working, you're losing value. By midday, a few of the other girls trickle in to prepare for evening. Solène is trying on a new wig, a glossy dark thing that makes her look like she belongs in a court, not this house. Lisette applies rouge with the kind of practiced ease that turns her face from plain to haunting in seconds. You admire her sometimes, the way she transforms, the way she commands attention. She isn't the prettiest, not by far, but when she walks into a room men forget how to breathe. Lisette catches you staring and smirks. "Never go too heavy on the cheeks," she says, dabbing the pigment with her pinky. "Looks like you're blushing for coin. Keep it light. Temptation works best when it looks accidental." You nod. You'll remember that. That afternoon, the madam hosts a visiting tailor. He arrives flanked by 2 apprentices, all of them carrying rolls of cloth and a ledger thicker than a Bible. You're told to assist with measurements, not your favourite task. Standing half naked while someone scribbles numbers on parchment always feels less like fitting and more like livestock appraisal. The tailor keeps saying things like, "plump in the hip, but the waist, tight lace might fix that." He prods, tugs, adjusts. You stare at the wall and pretend you're made of stone. Eventually they move on to fittings. The tailor is creating a new set of rotational costumes, as he calls them. The madam wants variety, different looks for different clients. The church frowns on nudity, but dressing up a girl like a duchess or a milkmaid? Apparently that's acceptable. Something about playing at virtue before the fall. One of the apprentices makes a joke about a nun's costume with a back that unlaces. No one laughs, but he doesn't notice. Here's a historical nugget for your dreams. Medieval brothels often had wardrobes, real ones, with dozens of outfits meant to suit the fantasies of every walk of man, from noble to merchant to priest. A man could ask for a girl dressed like his wife or his servant, or a queen he'd only seen in tapestries. Some brothels even offered masquerade nights, where costumes and masks blurred identities. You weren't just selling sex, you were selling theatre, a fantasy wrapped in satin and scent. And the fringe fact? There were brothels in Venice that provided character scripts to their workers, little cards that listed lines to say, mannerisms to use, stories to tell. You could become a widow weeping over her lost husband, a foreign princess desperate for affection, or a shepherdess looking for protection. Performance was part of the package. The more convincing, the higher the fee. Back in the wardrobe room, you finish hemming a dress for Solon, and pin the lining of a new corset for Mathilde, who's still too young to know how to lace herself properly. You don't ask how many clients she's had now. You don't want to know. Beatrice walks in mid-afternoon, holding a pair of boots she wants reheeled. She plops down beside you, drops her head back, and exhales like she's been holding her breath for days. Gods, I miss wearing my own clothes, she mutters. Once had a wool skirt that actually fit my hips. This place, everything's always either too tight or too open. You ask her what happened to the skirt. Pawned it for medicine, she says. Didn't even think twice. You finish your stitching in silence. That evening the madam walks through for inspection. She eyes the wardrobe, the folded gowns, the stacked wigs. Then she stops in front of you, picks up the red dress and holds it against your body. Tomorrow, she says, you'll wear this. You don't argue, but your stomach tightens. That night, lying on your mattress, the scent of lye soap still clinging to your skin, you stare at the ceiling and wonder what it would be like to own just one dress that was truly yours. Something simple, sturdy, warm, not designed to seduce, not stained with other people's breath, just yours. Maybe if you save enough coin. Maybe if you last through winter. Maybe. The red dress is heavier than you expect, not in weight, though the pearl-stitched bodice and thick velvet skirts do pull slightly at your shoulders, but in presence. The moment you slip it on, you feel it settle over your skin like a second identity, the kind that demands attention whether you want it or not. It's meant to be noticed, to be admired, and maybe even feared. It's not a dress you wear, it's a dress that wears you. Beatrice helps you tie the laces in back. Her fingers are fast, practiced. Don't slouch, she says, tugging the corset tighter. This one's all about posture. Men don't want you looking comfortable. They want you looking worth the pain. You try to breathe, shallow, measured. You'll get used to it, or you won't. The client who requested you tonight is a nobleman. That's all the madam tells you. His name isn't given, just that he wants discretion, obedience, and the red dress. You wonder what story he's trying to tell himself, that he's seducing a lady, humbling a duchess, or maybe he just likes the look of wealth, even when it's rented for an hour. He arrives past sundown with the kind of entrance that suggests he's more used to being announced than opening doors himself. He wears a deep green cloak with gold stitching, the crest on his ring half concealed by his gloves. You don't need to see it to know he's important. It's in the way everyone straightens when he passes. Even Adele comes downstairs, greeting him with a curt nod and a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. You're sent up to the velvet room, a chamber rarely used except for clients like this, nobility, clergy, or people with enough coin to pretend they're both. The room is absurd, velvet drapes over every wall. Candelabras flicker on side tables. There's a decanter of wine so rich and spiced it makes your throat burn just smelling it. You wait in the dress. Sitting feels impossible, so you stand near the window, hands folded. When he enters, you bow slightly, just enough. You don't speak first. He circles you once, not with lust, with evaluation, like he's deciding if you're worth what he paid. Turn, he says. You do. He steps closer. You smell cloves on his breath, polished leather, something metallic. Say something, he commands softly. What would you like me to say, my lord? He exhales through his nose, satisfied. You hit the tone perfectly, dignified submission. Good, he says. Now, undress. No tenderness, no pleasantries, just an order. You hesitate, but only for half a second. Then your fingers move to the laces. This is the part where you disappear. Not physically, not completely probably, but yourself, the girl behind the costume, behind the name, that part goes quiet. You do this often now. Slip out of your own skin, like it's just another layer of the dress. You become Celeste, the red-draped fantasy, the silent noblewoman stripped of everything but decorum. You survive by becoming what they want. The nobleman is efficient. No cruelty, no fumbling. He doesn't kiss you, doesn't speak much. When he finishes, he leaves you a gold coin. Real gold. He places it on the dresser like a tip at an inn, nods once and vanishes down the stairs. You stay in the room for a few extra minutes trying to slow your breathing. Your thighs ache. Your shoulders too. You wonder what it costs someone like him to rent a girl for an hour. You wonder if he'll remember your face tomorrow. You doubt it. But you'll remember his. That gold coin is worth more than you've earned in 3 nights combined. The madam lets you keep a full 1/6. Generous, she says, for a girl still learning. You press it into the hollow behind the stair where your little stash is growing. It's a secret now, a ritual. You count the coins not just by number, but by weight. Like they're bricks, building a tiny escape tunnel only you know exists. Later that night in the kitchen, Beatrice watches you sip lukewarm broth and says, "You did well, he didn't complain." You shrug, "I wasn't really there." She nods like she knows exactly what you mean. Sometimes not being there is the only way to get through it. You don't say anything, but that thought lodges itself deep in your chest. There's a woman who comes to the house once a week, always at dusk, always through the back door. She's not a client or a worker. Her name is Sabine, and she's a midwife. Though everyone knows she does more than birth babies. She's the one you go to when the bleeding doesn't stop, when something grows where it shouldn't, when you miss a cycle and know what it means. You've seen 3 girls visit her this week alone. Sabine is quiet, quick, gentle in a way that's almost painful because it reminds you what gentleness feels like. She checks bruises, applies poultices, whispers recipes for teas that are meant to move things along. She never judges, never scolds. She just gives you back a piece of yourself each time. Tonight she pulls you aside, Babio. Says she heard you wore the red dress. Says you did well. How would you know, you ask, half smiling. I know everything that happens in this house, she repeats. More than Adele, even. It's part of my job. You believe her, and that's when she gives you the sponge. It's wrapped in linen and soaked in vinegar and herbs. Not for cleaning, for protection. You're to insert it before clients, remove it after. It won't stop everything, she says, but it helps. Sometimes. You nod and thank her. You don't ask questions. Here's the fact of the night. Contraception in the Middle Ages was real. Maybe not effective by the modern standards, but very much practiced. Women used sponges soaked in vinegar, pessaries made from wool and dried fruits, even potions brewed from wild herbs, recipes passed from one woman to another in whispers and tucked away notes. The church condemned it, of course, called it unnatural, sinful, but that didn't stop women from trying to survive their own fertility. The debate historians still argue about is whether these practices were common knowledge among women or limited to certain circles. Midwives, healers, sex workers. You know the answer already. It's the girls like you who need it most. You slip the sponge into your pouch, carry it upstairs like a charm. That night you sleep in the red dress, just once, just to feel its weight without the pressure of performance. You lie on your mattress, pearls pressing into your collarbone, and think of all the girls who wore it before you. You wonder if any of them got out. You wonder if you will. The candlelight always lies a little. It softens the bruises, warms the edges of a face that feels colder by daylight, but it lies. You've learned that now, how everything in this house, from the perfume-soaked sheets to the lace curtain hanging over the warped window, is part of an illusion. And tonight, you're deep in it again. Another shift. Another round of wine-soaked breath and fingers that tremble or tighten too quickly. You're starting to recognize the patterns. You can predict a man's behavior just by the way he enters the room. But tonight is different. It starts with a gift. A client you've seen twice before, a weaver you think, or maybe a merchant who deals in cloth, hands you a parcel wrapped in rough linen. You hesitate to open it. Gifts aren't part of the arrangement, at least not for girls like you, but he insists. So you pull the fabric back and find a small bar of soap carefully moulded into the shape of a rose. It smells of lavender and almonds, and it has been pressed with someone's seal. A luxury item. Imported, most likely. It could have fed you for a week. You don't ask it what he wants in return, you already know. Later, as he undresses, he tells you about his daughter. She's 12, likes to draw birds in the dirt with a stick. You smile where he expects you to. You nod, hold his hand, make soft sounds of understanding as he talks. Not about pleasure, but about grief. He misses someone, though he never says who. You're used to that. Men come here to say the things they can't say to wives or brothers or priests, and then they pay you to forget. But this man, he's different. He touches your arm like he means it. Not lust, not possession, something else. And then he says the thing you're not supposed to hear. You're too good for this place. You smile, politely, just like Beatrice taught you. That's kind of you to say. I mean it. You nod again, because it's easier than the truth. He leaves just before curfew, brushing a hand along your shoulder on the way out. The soap remains on the dresser. You don't use it. You just hold it for a while, rolling it between your palms like a prayer stone. Then you wrap it back up and hide it under your mattress. You've learnt not to fall for softness, but sometimes softness falls on you like an unexpected summer rain. Momentary, sweet and dangerous. The next day, Beatrice notices the bar of soap while helping you change your shift. Her mouth twists into something between amusement and warning. He left that for you? You nod. Don't let Adele see it, she says. Tone low. Or the madam. They'll demand their cut. You blink. Of the soap? Of everything, love. Even a compliment, if it comes wrapped in silk. That night, Beatrice tells you a story. She once had a client who came every week for 3 months, brought her cakes, told her jokes, said he was going to take her away, marry her, give her a real life. Beatrice believed him. Saved up her coin, packed a small bundle, waited for him on the back steps one winter night. He never came. A week later, he returned, with a new girl on his arm, a merchant's daughter, wide-eyed and rosy-cheeked, who probably thought the brothel was just another market stall. Beatrice hasn't waited on the steps since. That story plants itself in your chest like a seed, one that sprouts with every quiet act of affection you receive. A client complimenting your voice, another pressing a ribbon into your palm. A poem once, scrawled on the back of a tavern flyer. All of it harmless, all of it dangerous. Historically, brothel workers forming attachments with clients wasn't uncommon. In fact, many cities had laws against it. Love was messy. Love cost the house money. Some brothels made girls swear oaths not to form romantic ties with customers. Others kept girls moving between rooms to prevent attachment. But it still happened. It always does, and sometimes it turned dark. There's a documented case in Toulouse of a man who became obsessed with a prostitute, followed her outside the brothel, proposed marriage, and then, when she refused, reported her to the church for witchcraft. She was flogged in public. He walked away untouched. That's the fringe fact tonight. Girls in your position were often accused of sorcery, not because they practiced it, but because they had power. Power over desire, power over secrets, power over men who couldn't handle the weakness they revealed when their pants were around their ankles. A woman who knows your sins is always dangerous. You think about this as you light your candle and prepare for the next client. You apply rouge, fasten the ribbon at your neck, spritz rosewater behind your ears. You look the part. You always do. Something's shifted. You're tired in a new way, not just physically, deep down. A kind of soul-deep fatigue that doesn't go away with sleep or food or coin. You feel hollowed out, like the hours are carving something away from you bit by bit. After the third client leaves that night, you go upstairs and lie in the tub. The water is barely warm. Your knees stick out, your hair drips over the side. You unwrap the soap and hold it to your nose. It smells too nice for a room like this. You wonder if he'll come back, the man with the soft hands and sad eyes. Part of you hopes he won't, because if he does, you might start believing in something dangerous. Not love exactly, just the possibility of love. The belief that someone might see you not as Celeste, not as a fantasy in silk, but as you, whoever that is now. You think of Lisette, who once said, "Real love doesn't visit brothels, it stays home with its wife." Maybe she's right. Maybe this place has twisted your sense of tenderness until it's just another service to perform, another mask. Still, that night, you dream of a quiet room, a table, 2 chairs, a man pouring wine and laughing at something you said. No corsets, no rouge, no candle tricks. Just a girl and a man and a world that isn't selling either of them. You wake up before dawn. Your pillow is damp, though you don't remember crying. You wrap the soap again and tuck it deeper beneath your mattress. Then you get dressed and go back to work. There's a sermon today. You hear the bell from down the street, deep and deliberate, like it's calling souls instead of just neighbours. It tolls 10 times before falling silent. That's your signal. Every girl in the house knows it by heart. On sermon days, you're not allowed outside, not even for bread or water, especially not near the church. The priest doesn't like reminders. The irony, of course, is that the priest himself will be here in a few hours. You mop the entryway anyway, because it gives your hand something to do. The madam paces upstairs, instructing the girls to keep the windows closed and voices down until evening. No laughing on sermon days, no music, no humming even. God forbid some passerby hears a melody floating from the wrong window. It's always like this, every Thursday. By the time dusk begins to melt the rooftops, you've changed into your Sunday shift, a soft linen chemise that looks modest enough from the front but leaves very little to the imagination when lit from behind. You brush your hair until it shines, tie it back with a ribbon that matches nothing else you're wearing, and apply just a touch of balm to your lips, not too red. Not on a holy day. He arrives on foot, as always, hood drawn, robes dark, eyes low. A travelling priest, technically, though he's more settled than his title suggests. You've heard he serves 3 parishes and none of them well. He comes alone, he always does. Adele meets him at the door and hands him the usual wine. It's a custom blend laced with a little valerian to take the edge off his nerves. You learned that from Sabine, who once whispered, "A man who fears his own desire is the most dangerous of all." You're inclined to agree. The priest doesn't ask for you. He never does. His girl is Solon. Every time. They disappear into the velvet room. You don't ask questions, instead you're summoned to the study. Adele waits behind her ledger, hair twisted up in gold wire. She doesn't look at you when she speaks. "We have a new policy," she says. "The church has requested a list of the girls working here. Not their real names, just the ones we use, for their records. Apparently they're conducting a census." You blink. A census of sin? She finally looks up. A census of commerce? Don't be naive. You nod, but the question sticks. And here's the thing, she's not wrong. Historically, the church maintained a famously contradictory relationship with the sex trade. Publicly, they condemned it, called it moral decay, the devil's playground, a temptation laid by Satan himself, but behind closed doors, they sanctioned it, profited from it. In Avignon, records show that papal officials taxed brothels and issued licenses. In London, bishops collected rent from entire red light districts. The logic went like this: better to regulate vice than risk rebellion. A controlled sin is easier to market than an uncontrolled one. And the strangest twist: many religious officials believed brothels protected good women by giving men a place to release their urges. You've heard that phrase before, usually from men who've never gone without power a single day in their lives. There's even a case from 14th century Florence where the church blessed a brothel in exchange for a cut of the profits. So yes, census lists of prostitutes, entirely plausible, maybe even routine, still, it unsettles you. You wonder how they'll use your name, if someone will copy it into a book of sins, if your face will end up in some record kept in a cold, dusty room alongside broken excommunications and faded prayers. That night, after the priest leaves, robes slightly crooked, face flushed, sandals stained with wine, Solène says nothing. She just sinks into the tub and stares at the ceiling like it's trying to tell her something. You want to ask her if he was kind or rough, or if he said anything strange, but you don't. Instead, she looks at you and says, "I used to believe in God." You don't reply. There's nothing to say. You're not sure what you believe in anymore. Adele comes in after midnight with news. The church wants a girl to attend next week's sermon, not as punishment, as a demonstration. Proof that the brothel supports moral reintegration. They're requesting someone to sit quietly in the third pew, wear a modest gown and bow her head during prayer. "You mean as a prop," you say. "As a witness," Adele corrects. You get the feeling you're being offered. You don't say yes, but you don't say no either. And that's how you end up the next Sunday wearing a borrowed wool gown that scratches your skin raw. Your hair's pulled tight, your shoes don't fit. You walk to the church under guard, the head down, shoulders tight. Every step feels like a lie stitched into your bones. The inside of the church is cold but beautiful. High arches, stained glass, dust motes like holy ghosts. You sit where you're told, you keep your hands folded, you bow your head when the priest speaks, not the one from Thursday, a different one, younger and louder, and filled with the same recycled metaphors about purity and shame. He talks about Mary Magdalene, of course he does, how she was saved from sin, how she washed the feet of Christ, how she became holy only after she gave up her wicked life. You can feel the stares of the congregation drifting toward you. You don't flinch, or you don't blink. You think of Magdalene often. She's the church's favourite contradiction, a sainted prostitute, a symbol of repentance. A woman loved by God but never fully redeemed in the eyes of men. Some say she was never a prostitute at all, that she was just a woman with a voice, and the church didn't know what to do with that. That debate, whether Magdalene was a sex worker or a scapegoat, is still raging among scholars today. You wonder if they have ever sat where you are, knees aching on the stone floor, the scent of incense clinging to their skin, while a man in robes tells your story like it doesn't belong to you. After the sermon, you're dismissed. No one speaks to you, not directly. A few glance, one spits, another drops a crust of bread in your hand as if you're starving and not employed in one of the most lucrative trades in the city. You return to the brothel feeling more naked than you've ever been. That night, you scrub your skin till it stings. You light a candle. You stare at the bar of soap the merchant left you and consider throwing it out the window. Instead, you put it back under the mattress. Maybe God sees you, maybe he doesn't. Either way, you still have to work tomorrow. The banners go up overnight. You wake to the sound of distant drums and shouting vendors, and when you press your face to the crooked window, the streets are already blooming with colour. Ribbons stretch across wooden beams, bright cloths hang from balconies, there's music, clumsy and joyful, and the smell of roasting meat drifting on the breeze. Carnival has arrived. It's not a single day, not here, not in this city. Carnival is a week of licensed chaos, sanctioned madness, and wine running like water. It's masks and fire breathers and stilt walkers, and men who act like boys, and boys who are drunk enough to think they're men. It's freedom, allegedly. A week where rules are flipped and everyone gets to pretend just for a moment there's something else. For the brothel, it's both a blessing and a threat. Business triples during Carnival. So many visitors. So much coin. But the risk? It triples too. Drunken men forget manners. Married men forget boundaries. Guards forget their oaths. And the line between party and peril gets very, very blurry. You're given your costume just after breakfast. It's a tight-fitting green dress with a plunging neckline trimmed in bells. Not symbolic ones, real ones. Tiny brass chimes stitched into the hem and sleeves, so every step you take announces your presence. You're also given a mask, half-face, velvet-lined, black as soot. It ties behind your head and leaves your mouth free. Beatrice peeks into your room while you're dressing. She's in orange, masked too, with ribbons fluttering down her arms. She eyes your outfit and grins. You look like temptation dressed itself in a rush. You snort. I look like a jester's mistress. Same difference, Dum, she says, and tosses you a gold ribbon. Gosh, tie that in your hair. Men love gold during Carnival. It makes them feel like kings. You help Mathilde into her costume next. She's shaking a little. Her dress is too big at the shoulders, and the bells make her flinch every time she moves. She's only worked a handful of nights. This will be her first Carnival. They'll be different, she whispers. Yes, you say, but you'll be the same. Don't forget that. You step into the street as a group, 4 of you walking together, a careful formation that looks casual but isn't. Strength in numbers. The city is alive, pulsing with music and shouting. Men in masks whistle, throw flowers, toss coins at dancers. Group of boys dressed as devils scatter petals in your path and chant in high-pitched voices. Holy harlots! Holy harlots! One of them bows low and presses a kiss to your gloved hand. You smile, because that's what the mask demands. You've never seen the city like this. Everyone wears masks, even in the guards, especially the guards. It's like the entire world has agreed to forget who they are for one glorious, dangerous week. There's a square where the festivities are thickest. Fire eaters, puppeteers, musicians pounding out rhythms so fast your chest vibrates with them. You pass a man dressed as Death, scythe and all, offering kisses for coin. You pass a woman dressed as a bishop shouting psalms between gulps of wine. No one stops her. That's Carnival. You reach the brothel's rented stall by the square. It's curtained, padded, perfumed. A kissing booth, they call it. A safe place for flirting, hand-holding and drink. Real business happens elsewhere, upstairs in the house or behind closed doors, but here is the hook, the show. You take your place on the padded bench and smile at the crowd. Men come, of course, masked, red-cheeked, coin-drunk and eager. They ask your name and you make one up on the spot. Sylvie, Oriane, Juliet. Each name becomes a new version of you, a safer one. One man buys you a sugar-dipped fig and feeds it to you slowly, piece by piece, like he's never touched sweetness before. Another begs you to run away with him. He's dressed like a pirate and smells like old cheese, but the offer is oddly sincere. A third says nothing at all, just stares at you through his gold mask for a long, silent moment, then presses a single silver coin into your palm and walks away. By sundown, your cheeks hurt from smiling. The night is when it gets strange. The masks come off slowly, first the delicate ones, then the heavier personas. You see a city official staggering past, arm wrapped around a girl dressed as a nun. You see two priests brawling in the mud over who gets to kiss a fortune teller. You see women laughing loudly, drinking openly, shouting poetry into the night sky. It is beautiful, and a little terrifying. That's when the nobleman returns, the one from the red dress. You recognise him by his ring, same gold crest, same careful gait. His mask is simple this time. Black velvet. You don't speak to him, but he sees you. He smiles, nods, leaves a flower on your bench before vanishing into the crowd. Later, Beatrice grabs your wrist and pulls you into the alley behind the stall. Her voice is tight. Lisette's gone. What? She left with someone. Said she was going to meet him in the South Square. Never came back. Adele is furious. You feel a chill climb up your spine. Gone like Ruth. Gone like she's not coming back. You don't know whether to be afraid or envious. Back inside the house, Carnival takes on a different shape. Rooms are booked solid. Clients rotate like clockwork. The girls strip out of their masks, but not their roles. You wash, redress, touch up your rouge, smile. Again and again. A new man every hour, maybe every half hour. They blur together. A merchant with wandering hands, a traveller who weeps mid-act, a boy barely grown who says, "You remind me of my mother." You don't respond to that one. You work through the night. You lose track of time. There's a fringe fact tucked into this revelry. In many medieval cities, Carnival was the only time prostitutes were allowed to parade openly. Some brothels even hosted public dances, with girls dressed as royalty, goddesses or devils. It was spectacle. It was advertisement. But it was also reclamation. For 1 week a year, the most despised women in the city became its muses. And the debate, still simmering in dusty books, is whether this gave them power, or just dressed up their suffering in bells and paint. You still don't know. By the time the sun rises, your mask is smeared, your dress is stained. You've made more coin in a night than you usually do in a week. You lie on your bed, exhausted and aching, with the flower from the nobleman beside your pillow. Carnival is freedom, they say, but even freedom, you realise, comes with a closing bell. A week after Carnival ends, the streets feel hollow, like a stage after the actors have left. Ribbons still hang from balconies, limp and rain-streaked, and the scent of spilled wine and trampled flowers lingers in the cobblestones. What's left of the joy is now residue. Mud, debt, a few bruises that haven't faded. Life returns to normal, or at least the version of normal that involves lace, bruised hips and coin exchanged in candlelight. You, however, don't feel quite the same. It's the girl at the door that changes everything. She arrives in the early morning when the sun is just melting fog off the rooftops. You're helping Mathilde fetch water, fingers numb from the cold when the knock comes. It's sharp, confident, not the knock of a client. Adele answers it herself, which is never a good sign. The girl is standing there, wrapped in a wool cloak dyed a blue so rich you know it didn't come from this city. Her boots are stitched with tiny silver birds. She's not local. She's not poor, and she's not afraid. You watch from the stairwell as Adele narrows her eyes and says something too low to hear. The girl responds calmly, hands folded in front of her, voice precise. Her accent is odd, somewhere between Spanish and French. You're used to hearing desperation at the door. This isn't that. This is strategy. Later, Adele calls a meeting in the parlour. You're summoned along with 6 other girls. The fire is lit, which means this is serious. The madam stands near the hearth, arms crossed, face unreadable. Adele sips a goblet of cider and gestures toward the girl, now unhooded. "This is Raina," she says. "She's from Valencia. She'll be staying with us for the season." Raina smiles. It's not unkind, but it's not warm either. "I'm here on an exchange," she says, "from a house in Barcelona." You blink. "Like a trade?" Adele nods. "Temporary. She'll teach. Observe. Earn, of course. A trade, like spices or horses. Beatrice leans in and mutters, "They're sending us girls like letters now." Raina is nothing like anyone in the house. She moves like she's dancing, speaks like she's always on the verge of laughing, and wears colours none of you can afford. Her hair is long and braided with ribbons. Her ears are pierced, 3 times on each lobe. When a client speaks to her, she tilts her head and answers in a mix of Latin and music. The men adore her, so do some of the women. She's not cruel, she's not even proud. But she's trained, you can see it. She touches with intention. She pauses between words like she knows how power works. And at night, while the rest of you collapse into bed like sacks of flour, Raina sits near the window writing in a leather-bound book with a feather quill. "What do you write?" you ask one night, voice soft. She glances over her shoulder. "Letters, lists, details. Of the clients. Of everything." You pause. "Why?" She smiles, teeth gleaming in the candlelight. "Because memory is a form of ownership. And we own so little, don't we?" That sentence stays with you. Over the next week, she shares strange tricks, Spanish tricks, like how to breathe in through your mouth to keep from gagging, how to smile without showing your teeth. Apparently some men find teeth too challenging. How to lean your weight into a man's thigh without seeming to. It's not seduction, it's science. She teaches you a knot that undoes in 2 pulls, a wrist twist that makes it look like you're trembling when you're not. How to cry softly on cue. Tears are valuable, she says, but only if you control when they fall. You realise she's not just a worker, she's an artisan, a scholar of desire, and you wonder what kind of brothel produces that. Historically, courtesans in places like Venice and Cordoba were far more than prostitutes. They were trained in music, poetry, politic. Some were more educated than the men who visited them. A few even advised rulers behind closed doors, wielding power with the flick of a fan or the choice of a poem. They were feared and admired, worshipped and reviled. And here's the fringe fact. In some Islamic cities during the 13th and 14th centuries, there were whole schools dedicated to training professional companions, not only in sex, but in literature, astronomy and art. It was a recognised trade, licensed, structured, taught. The idea was that men of status should be entertained by women of intellect as well as beauty. In the Christian world it was rarer, but not impossible. You ask Raina one night how she ended up in this work. She shrugs. "My mother did it, and her mother before her. It's not shameful where I'm from." You try to imagine that. A world where you could walk into a tavern and say what you are without ducking your head. "Do you ever want to stop?" you ask. She thinks. "Not yet, maybe later. When I'm the one with the books and the coin." And suddenly you see the plan behind the polish. Raina isn't passing through. She's collecting. Information. Technique. Power. She'll move on when she's ready and not before. Beatrice doesn't like her. Too clean, too careful. "She smells like cinnamon and trickery," she whispers. But even Beatrice listens when Raina speaks. You start writing too, not like her in a fancy book with a quill. Just tiny marks on scraps of paper. Hidden under your mattress, things you learn, things you overhear, a list of clients who pay late, one who cries after finishing, one who touches the girls too hard unless you say pomegranate, the word Adele uses to signal trouble. Raina notices one night. She picks up one of your scraps, reads the notes. "You're learning," she says, handing it back. "Good. One day you'll need every word." You wonder what she's preparing you for. Maybe the world, maybe escape, maybe war. You start braiding your hair like hers. You borrow a pair of earrings. You even try her smile in the mirror. It feels odd, powerful, like maybe, for once, you're wearing the mask instead of being it. It begins with silence, not the soft kind you get after midnight or when the house finally exhales, but the wrong kind. Thick, heavy, you wake to it. No footsteps, no clatter from the kitchen, no creak of Matilda's bed across the hall. Just an eerie stillness that feels like it's waiting for something. Beatrice is already up. Her face is pale, and her hands are shaking as she laces her bodice. "No water at the pump," she says. "No bread from the market, and Adele's not letting anyone outside." You blink the sleep from your eyes. "Why?" She doesn't answer. Downstairs the parlour is quiet. The fireplace is dark. Adele sits by the window, watching the street through a slit in the curtain. The madam is pacing, faster than usual, chewing her thumbnail, muttering numbers under her breath. You've never seen her look afraid before. Then the bell tolls. Not the church bell, a smaller one, carried by a boy in tattered robes walking down the street, calling, in a hoarse, shaking voice, "Plague! Plague in the quarter! Stay indoors, mark your doors, plague!" The word feels unreal, like it doesn't belong in your ears, like it's from a play or a sermon. But no, it's here. It's real. You press a hand to your throat, it feels hot. Everything feels hot. Adele locks the door herself. Over the next hour the house changes. Doors are barred, sheets are boiled. Sabine, the healer, arrives with bundles of herbs and begins shoving dried rue and wormwood into every windowsill. Breathe through a cloth, she tells you. If you start coughing, isolate. If your neck swells, pray. No one's laughing anymore. By afternoon, the city outside sounds like a different place. No bells, no shouting, no vendors, just the creak of carts and the slow toll of death bells and the occasional scream too far off to name. You huddle in the back room with Mathilde and Solon. Raina reads silently in the corner, unfazed. Of course she's unfazed. You wonder if anything rattles her. That night, no clients come. None. A first, not even the desperate ones. You eat stale bread in the kitchen, each girl taking small, careful bites. No one talks. Even Beatrice is quiet. You glance at the ceiling and imagine the dust carrying death. Every breath feels dangerous. Every cough makes heads turn. By the next day, the first bodies are carted past the brothel. You watch through the shutters. Men with handkerchiefs tied over their faces dragging wooden carts filled with shapes wrapped in blankets. Sometimes there's no blanket. Just a face, pale and still, eyes half open. You see a child. A woman with her hair still braided. A baker you used to buy rolls from, his hands hanging limp off the edge. The city is dying. You're locked in a house built on touch. The irony is cruel. Adele imposes a strict quarantine. No clients, no new girls. The brothel is closed for now, but that doesn't mean you're free. Now you're something else, property at risk. The madam goes through the ledgers twice a day. She starts rationing. 1 bowl of soup per girl, no wine except for clients when they return. If they return, you aren't allowed to bathe together. Beds are moved, 1 girl to a room. The parlour becomes an infirmary. Just in case. And then Mathilde starts coughing. You hear it in the night. Ragged, wet. You sit up in bed and stare at the door. Beatrice says nothing. But in the morning, Mathilde is gone. Her room is empty. Her sheets are burned. No one tells you what happened. You just know. That night, the madam opens a new bottle of wine. The expensive kind. She passes it around the kitchen. No one refuses. She raises her cup. To survival, she says, voice flat. To Mathilde, Raina says quietly. No one drinks to that. The next week passes in a blur of fever checks, boiled herbs, whispered prayers. You take to sleeping with a cloth tied around your mouth. You clean obsessively. Sabine shows you how to boil rosemary and cloves and pour the water into bowls under your bed. It helps, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's all for show. Still, it's something. Historically, outbreaks of plague reshaped entire cities. In some places, brothels were shuttered permanently. Others stayed open secretly, dangerously catering to clients who believed sex could chase away death. It never could. In certain towns, sex workers were blamed for spreading the disease, accused of being cursed. Some were killed outright, beaten in the streets, burned with the trash. Others were locked inside and left to die. But the truth is, many women in the trade also served as caregivers during plague years, tending to the sick, cleaning the bodies, staying when others fled. It's one of history's strangest paradoxes. The women deemed unholy were often the ones who stayed kind when things got most dire. That's the fringe fact you learn now. You also learn that fear has a smell. It's like sweat and vinegar and unspoken grief. The house reeks of it. You carry it on your skin. One night Solon goes quiet. Too quiet. You find her on the rooftop staring out at the city. So still it looks made of ash. She says, "I think the air's lighter up here." You sit beside her. She doesn't look at you. "If I get it," she says, "don't put me in that parlour. Just toss me out the window." You want to laugh, but you don't. You take her hand instead. Beatrice starts writing letters. To no one, just names, lists, regrets. You find one on the table after she's gone to bed. It just says, "Tell Anna I never meant to stay this long." You don't ask who Anna is. You dream of strange things, being buried alive, a feast where everyone wears masks made of bone, a wedding with no groom. You wake up sweating. The city stays locked. But then, one day, a knock comes at the back door. You all freeze. It's not a client. It's a boy, young, maybe 14, filthy, barefoot, holding a pouch of coin. He stammers, "My master." He wants a girl, one with strong lungs. Adele doesn't say no. She looks around the room, and her eyes settle on you. You don't say yes, you don't nod, you don't blink. You just meet Adele's gaze across the room, and somehow that's all it takes. You're selected like a loaf off a shelf. No discussion, no questions. The other girls look away except Beatrice, whose eyes burn like coals beneath her lids. She doesn't try to stop it. No one ever does. The boy leads you through back streets slick with the rain and filth. You keep your scarf pulled tight over your face, but the air still reeks of rot, of too many people dying too close together, of wood smoke and something far more human. There are doors marked with white crosses now, chalked by shaking hands, some smeared by the weather. You pass a man shouting for his mother, barefoot in the mud. You step around him. The boy doesn't speak until you're inside the house. It's large, half collapsed in the upper stories, but still standing. Curtains are drawn. A fire burns in the hearth, stoked too high. The heat oppressive. He leads you into a side room where a man lies under a thick blanket. You smell vinegar, lemon balm, and something underneath. Something sweet and wrong. "This is him," the boy says, voice brittle. "He said he wants company, not touch, just company." "Oh, boy." You nod once. Your tongue is dry. The man is not old, but he's ravaged. Pale as paper, sweat slicking his forehead, lips cracked. His eyes flutter open as you step near, and for a moment you think he's going to scream or ask for wine or demand something unspeakable. But he only says, "Sit, please." You do, quietly. "I used to come to your house," he says. His voice is thin, more breath than sound. "Before all those... You may not remember me." You don't, but you say, "I do." He smiles. He tells you his name, but you know better than to remember it. "I asked for you," he says, "because you were kind." That stops you. Kind? You search your memory, try to recall anything more than practiced smiles and safe hands. Nothing. Maybe you gave him extra time. Maybe you listened when he spoke. Maybe you were just quieter than the others. "I'm not afraid of death," he continues, "but I didn't want to go out alone." You sit there for nearly an hour. He talks, you nod, sometimes you answer. He asks if you've seen the sea. You haven't. He says it's grey. He asks if you believe in God. You say you're undecided. He laughs softly. That makes two of us. Eventually, he falls asleep. You don't move, not until his breathing stops. You slip out without a word. The boy doesn't follow you back. You return to the brothel in silence, strip your clothes at the back door, and throw them into the fire pit. Adele watches you do it. She nods, says nothing. Sabine makes you bathe twice, rosewater and ashes, then vinegar, then soap. Still, you feel stained. Later you sit in the parlour with Beatrice, drinking weak tea that tastes like boiled leaves and sadness. "I heard," she says. You shrug. "Was it bad?" You think. "It was quiet." She nods. "That's worse." It happens again. 3 days later, different boy, different door. This time it's an old man who's lost his wife. He just wants a lullaby. You hum what you remember from childhood, your voice shaking. He dies holding your hand. Word spreads. The brothel has girls who aren't afraid and girls who will go to the sick, not to service them, but to be with them. The coin is heavy, the risks are worse. Raina refuses. "I didn't come here to watch men die," she says, and you don't blame her. So Len agrees to go once, comes back shaking, doesn't eat for 2 days. Adele adds a new rule to the ledger. Deathbed company costs triple, and the work becomes a rotation. You're not just selling your body anymore. You're selling your presence, your warmth, your ability to listen without crying. You become a companion to the dying, a shadow with soft hands, a voice that doesn't tremble when someone asks, Will you stay with me? Here's the cold truth of history. During plagues, prostitutes were often among the last to remain with the dying. While family fled, while priests sealed themselves in, these women stayed. Not because they were fearless, not because they were saints, but because they were already on the edge of the world, and once you're there, death stops feeling like such a leap. There's a debate among historians about how much choice these women actually had. Some argue it was survival, they had no other way to earn. Others claim it was compassion. But you don't believe in clean answers anymore. You do it because no one else will. You do it because you're already half invisible, and sometimes you do it because someone has to be kind before the end. One night the man you're sent to is already unconscious. His house is filled with candles. Someone loved him once. You sit beside him and talk about the rain even though you're not sure he hears you. You tell him your name is Celeste. You say it like it's real. When he dies you close his eyes, and for the first time you cry. Only a little. The tears surprise you. You thought you'd run out. You come back to the brothel, skin cold, chest hollow. Sabine meets you with hot tea and a new sponge wrapped in lavender. You don't ask what it's for, you know. That night you dream of ghosts, not the scary kind. The kind that sit beside your bed and whisper, "Thank you." In the morning, Adele hands you an extra coin. You stare at it. She says, "You're earning your place." You don't know what to feel about that. Outside, the bells are quieter now. Not gone, but fewer. The city is beginning to breathe again. But the house? The house remembers. It's a whisper at first, a name, not a new girl, not a client. Just a name passed between folded hands and lowered voices. Helene. You hear it in the kitchen one morning as Solène slices turnips and mutters it under her breath like a prayer. Beatrice says it later that night in the hallway, to no one in particular. "Helene made it," she says. "You're brushing your hair." You pause mid-stroke. "Who?" Beatrice glances over her shoulder. Her face is unreadable. "She was one of us, years ago." You press, gently, Beatrice hesitates, then shrugs. "She got out." You freeze. "Out?" "Gone. Disappeared. Just one day. No more shifts, no more ledger lines, no more back rooms. Gone." You've heard these stories before. Ruth, Anna, the girl with the red scarf. They always go the same way. Vanishing acts soaked in legend, half true at best, often followed by a quiet return weeks later, bruised or shamed or never spoken of again. But this one feels different. This name lingers. "Where did she go?" you ask. Beatrice snorts. "That's the fun part. No one knows. No goodbyes, no coin left behind, not even a worn-out ribbon. Just poof." You think about Helene all day, all night. You try to picture her face, but you can't. Maybe she was here before you arrived. Maybe her absence was scrubbed out like a stain. Or maybe she never existed at all. Still, the story gains weight. Solène swears she once saw Helene board a carriage with a merchant. He bought her freedom, she says. Took her to the countryside, built her a house. They raise goats now. You blink. Goats? Happy ones, she insists. Lisette rolls her eyes. More likely she's in some other brothel with a different name and worse curtains. You ask Adele. She doesn't blink. Helene earned her exit. That's all you need to know. Earned. That word sits on your tongue like ash. The brothel doesn't talk about exits. Not formally. There's no ladder, no path, no list of milestones that get you out, no pension, no gold watch. You don't retire from this work. You age out, you break, you vanish. And yet here's this story fluttering through the house like a paper bird, suggesting that freedom isn't just a dream, but a debt you can pay off. You start watching Adele more closely. The way she measures coin, the way she handles records. You begin wondering, are there ledgers behind the ledgers? One for favours, one for debts, one for girls like Helene. You ask Beatrice again later. Just the two of you sitting by the fire, warming your feet. What did she do to earn her way out? Beatrice doesn't look up. She never cried. That's it. She never once cried, she says, not even on her first night, not when she was beaten, not when she broke her wrist slipping on the stairs, not even when her sister died and no one told her until 3 days later. You fall silent. She kept a little book, Beatrice adds. Not like Raina's, just notes, names, what they paid, what they promised, who to blackmail, who to trust. And that's when it clicks. She didn't escape. She negotiated. You lie awake that night thinking about it. Thinking about how many girls have passed through this house, how many might have had a book, how many made it out, how many tried. You start to notice the ones who are planning. Lisette sharpens her comb into a thin blade. "Just in case," she says, grinning. But her eyes don't laugh. Solène saves crusts of bread under her bed. Raina continues writing in her ledger. Calmly, silently, always in the same corner by the window. She's added a second journal now, this one smaller, locked. You check on your own stash beneath the floorboard. Still there. 10 silvers, 15 coppers. A garnet button you think might be real. Enough to last 3 nights outside. 4 if you don't eat. Not enough. You start working more, not just nights, days too. You volunteer for the kitchen, for laundry, for errands to the apothecary when Sabine's busy. You learn how to barter with the baker, how to add just a little cinnamon to the bread so the scent carries down the street. You smile wider, speak less. You're building something, a version of yourself that someone might mistake for indispensable. One evening, a client offers you extra coin for a private song. You hum a lullaby your mother used to sing, soft, simple. He cries. "Do you want more time?" you ask. He shakes his head. "No, I just needed to remember something kind." You think of Hélène again. Was she kind or clever or cruel enough to survive without guilt? The historical records are silent on women like her. There are few names, fewer fates. The most famous exits are fictional, romanticized accounts of prostitutes who marry nobility or become saints. But those are myths. Saints require miracles. You're just trying to make it through the week. Still, there are occasional glimpses. A record in Avignon of a woman who paid off her madam, bought a vineyard and changed her name. A letter from a merchant to his brother, warning him not to fall in love with a former courtesan who knows too much and drinks too little. A grave marker found in Toulouse, anonymous but adorned with an expensive carving of a rose and a set of crossed keys. Keys. To what? To freedom, to secrets, to somewhere else? You dream of Hélène that night. In the dream, she's wearing a red cloak and walking through the city without a mask. People part for her like wind on grass. She doesn't run, she doesn't hide, she just walks. You wake up breathless. Maybe she's dead, maybe she's a lie. But still, maybe. The story stays. It's the kind of hope you don't say aloud, the kind you hide in your boot stitched behind your heel, the kind that keeps your spine straight even on your worst nights. Because if one girl made it out, then maybe, just maybe. So can you. You hear her name for the first time in church, not Magdalene, no, she's old news. The eternal sinner turned saint the priests love to throw at you like a redemption bone. This one is different. This name is whispered, not preached, carried like a secret passed from mouth to mouth behind gloved hands. You're sitting in the back pew again, as part of another brothel-sponsored reformation visit, when a man behind you leans in and mutters, "You ever hear of Thais?" You blink, shake your head. "She was a harlot," he says, "became a saint, died in a convent. They say she burned her jewels in the square as penance." You don't turn around, just stare at the pulpit and let the story settle in your mind like dust in sunlight. When you get back to the house, you ask Adele. She nods slowly. Saint Thais, from Egypt, or maybe Antioch. Depends on who's telling it. Was she real? Adele's lips twitch. Aren't we all in someone's version? You learn more from Sabine, who brings herbs and knowledge in equal measure. She was a courtesan, Sabine says, mixing crushed valerian into a bowl. Famous, rich, men lined up for her. Then a monk, Paphnutius I think, convinced her that lust was death. She repented, locked herself in a cell for 3 years. No light, no voice, just prayer. When they opened the door, she was dying, but holy. You stare at the steam rising from the bowl. And the church loves her now? Sabine shrugs. They only love you once you stop being dangerous. It's a funny thing how the very institutions that scorn you in life rewrite you in death. Turn your story into a fable, your struggle into a symbol. They want your suffering sanitized. They want your sacrifice, not your survival. You think of St. Pelagia too, another name you stumble upon. She was supposedly so beautiful men fell to their knees just watching her walk. They say she converted, threw her jewels into the sea, and spent the rest of her life disguised as a male hermit in the desert. Her body wasn't even found until after death when they undressed her. And then there's Mary of Egypt, another former harlot turned holy, who stripped in the streets and then spent 40 years wandering the wilderness in penance. They say her body never decayed. All these women, all these names, all turned sacred after they vanished. You wonder if sainthood is just another form of disappearance, a reward for silence, for self-erasure. You don't want to be a saint, not if it means dying in a box or starving on a rock. Still, part of you aches for something like it. Not the holy ending, but the recognition. The idea that someone, somewhere might look at your life and call it worthy. You bring up the idea one night, when Beatrice is trimming her nails with a knife she hides in her boot. You ever think about being a saint, you ask? She snorts. I'm more likely to be martyred for stealing cheese, you smile. I'm serious. No, she says calmly. You're tired. She's right, of course. Later, Raina joins you by the hearth, rubbing oil into her knees. The church doesn't want women like us holy, she says. They want us gone, quiet, or made into warnings. You ask her if they have stories like Thais where she's from. She nods. Yes, different names. Same bones. And here's your historical fact for the night. There really were women like Thais and Pelagia mentioned in early Christian texts, many of them former sex workers who were later canonized. The church loved these stories. They were useful. They proved that even the dirtiest women could be scrubbed clean if they suffered enough. The formula was simple. Sin plus pain plus isolation its grace. But scholars today debate whether these women ever existed at all. Maybe they were real. Maybe they were stories created by monks. Maybe both. Versions piled on top of each other until the original person, if there ever was one, was long gone. One fringe detail. In a few monasteries, young novitiates were forced to copy the lives of reformed harlots by hand as a lesson in humility. Those pages still exist. Pages copied by trembling girls trying to unlearn their own desire. You wonder what it would be like to have your story copied like that. Not this version, of course, the real one. The bruises, the fake names, the cracked hands. Not for shame, not for worship, just to be remembered as you were. There's a girl in the house named Clarice. She's quiet, works mostly with the older clients, the ones who like soft voices and fewer questions. She tells you one night that she keeps a journal under her mattress. For when I'm gone, she says. Gone where? She shrugs. Doesn't matter. Just want someone to know I was here. You nod. Then go back to writing your own notes. Your own list of names, faces, things that made you feel something. A white ribbon. A song hummed by a dying man, the colour of Mathilde's eyes before she started coughing. These are your relics, your version of sainthood. Not holy bones, not desert suffering, just memory. The church may have a use for your corpse one day, may clean your story up, give you a name like Blessed Celeste, tell the world you gave up sin after a vision, spent your last days feeding lepers with bare hands, but tonight, you know the truth. You fed a dying man soup because no one else would. You braided Raina's hair when her shoulder ached too much to lift her arm. You sat with Soan while she threw up wine and whispered to, "You're still here. That means something." No candlelit shrine can hold that. You think about carving your name into the stone behind the brothel. Not Celeste, your real name, just in case no one else ever does, because you might not be holy, but you were here. The first accusation comes in whispers. You're in the laundry room with Solen scrubbing a sheet that smells like blood and lavender, when Beatrice bursts in, eyes wide and mouth already moving. "They're saying Lizette's a witch." You blink, unsure you heard her right. "A what?" "A witch. One of the bishop's men came to the tavern last night, talking about spells and unholy seductions. Someone saw her chanting, apparently." Beatrice snorts, flicks water from her fingers. She was singing. Poor fool can't even carry a tune. The words hang heavy in the air. Lisette, the girl who hums while brushing her teeth, the one who dabs rose water behind her ears and arranges flowers in her room when she's bored. She's no witch, she's barely threatening. But the word witch, it sticks. You've heard it used before, mostly in jest. A woman with too many herbs, too many opinions, or too much beauty. Raina once teased that Adele had the look of a woman who knows how to curse a man's wine. Everyone laughed, but no one laughs today. By evening, the story has grown teeth. Now Lisette is said to have bewitched a merchant, made him fall in love and give her silver candlesticks. Never mind that he gave the same gifts to 2 other girls in the house. Now there are rumours of secret symbols drawn under her bed. bones hidden in her wardrobe, a candle that burned blue during a thunderstorm. The city is hungry for scapegoats. The plague may have quieted, but the fear hasn't. Something must be blamed. And women, especially women who survive, who thrive, who take power where they weren't given it, are always first on the list. You try to ask Adele what's being done, but she just mutters, "We're watching it," which means nothing. Watching won't save Lisette if the church decides she's dangerous. The next morning she's gone. No explanation, no warning. Her room is empty. The flower vase shattered. Her mirror turned to face the wall. You feel sick. Beatrice says nothing at first. Then when the others are asleep, she finds you in the washroom and says quietly, "They took her." "Who?" "The bishop's men." You don't ask what happens next. You've heard stories. A trial if they're feeling generous, a public whipping, or fire. She's not the first, she won't be the last. Historically, accusations of witchcraft against sex workers were more common than you'd think. Beauty and seduction were seen as signs of dark power. A woman who could control men's desire, without wealth, without title, was unnatural, dangerous, a threat to the social order. And the church? They loved a visible enemy. It gave them a chance to cleanse, to assert control. In Toulouse, records show that brothels were raided not just for vice, but for demonic influence. Girls were forced to confess to things they didn't understand, making potions, speaking to shadows, dreaming too vividly. A girl once testified that her only spell was whispering men's names until they stopped crying. In one case, a woman was executed because she was seen gathering herbs barefoot at night. She was a midwife. You think of Sabine. You think of her bundles of rue and lavender, her whispered recipes, her quiet hands. If someone pointed at her, would anyone protect her? Would you? The air in the brothel grows heavier. Clients still come, but they're more cautious now. One man asks if you can bless his wine. Another wants to touch your hair, just to make sure it's real. They don't say which, not directly, but they circle it. Raina is more careful now. She burns her journals, keeps her head down. You find her one night staring into a candle, jaw clenched. They kill women like us, she says. Not because we curse them, because we don't need them. You ask Adele again, "Are we safe?" She snorts. "No one in this city is safe. We're just useful." It's not an answer, but it's true. Solène begins wearing a little wooden cross around her neck. Not because she's devout, but because it helps. The priest who visits most often compliments it. Says she looks saved. She nods and smiles and pours his wine. You watch the shift happen. The girls laugh less. They cover up more. They burn anything that could be mistaken for ritual. Dried flowers, odd rocks, scraps of ribbon tied in knots. Even your journal gets tucked deeper under the mattress. The pages feel heavier now. Dangerous. One night you wake from a dream of Lisette. She's walking down the street in broad daylight, barefoot and glowing, and no one sees her. Not the priest, not the guards, not even Adele. You reach out, but she passes through you like smoke. You sit up, gasping, your chest hurts. You go to the washroom and throw up nothing but bile. You don't go back to sleep. Here's a strange historical footnote. In parts of northern Europe, certain brothels had built-in protection rituals. Girls were taught to cross their fingers behind their backs when lying, to never sleep with both eyes closed, to leave shoes facing outward by the bed. Some swore by the red ribbons, others by garlic. Superstition became survival, not just against illness, but against accusation. You start tying your ribbon differently, over your left shoulder. Raina tells you it means untouched by fire in her hometown. You don't ask if that's literal. One evening, Beatrice finds you sewing your hem shut with black thread. She raises an eyebrow. "Protection, you say." She nods and hands you her own needle. Later, a man asks you what you'd do if someone accused you of being a witch. You look him straight in the eyes and say, "I'd ask them if they still wanted the hour they paid for." He laughs. You don't. After the second girl disappears, Clarice. This time, the house tightens. No more nighttime walks, no more herbs from Sabine unless they come wrapped in wool. Adele issues new rules. No singing in public, no mention of dreams, keep your hands clean, keep your eyes down. You obey, because now survival isn't just about serving, it's about not being noticed. You write Lisette's name on a scrap of parchment, fold it, burn it. You hope she made it somewhere, that she wasn't turned to ash on a stage, but you don't ask. You just wear your ribbon and keep your mouth shut. It starts with the sound of paper, that delicate, crinkled whisper. Almost nothing, but sharp as a blade when it comes from beneath the floorboards. You're cleaning the base of the bed, digging out the usual debris, hairpins, dust, a button from a dress you haven't worn in weeks, when your fingernail catches on something thin and stiff wedged in the crack between boards. You pry it loose, thinking it's another one of Raina's secret notes. But when you unfold it, the parchment is dry, browned at the edges, ink faded but still legible. You scan the words once, then again. It's not new, it's not Raina's, it's a journal entry, but it's not yours. You sit back slowly, heart thudding. The handwriting is loopy, delicate. Older maybe. Familiar somehow, though you can't place it. The first line reads, Day 127. No one has noticed that I stopped pretending. You blink. Read on. It's from a girl who once lived in your room. You don't know her name, not yet. But her words come quick, frantic, hungry. She writes about clients who asked for her by the wrong name, about hiding coins in her sleeves, about swallowing tears during confession and biting her tongue during sermons. She writes about her dreams, of fields, cold rivers, orange trees. She writes about love, briefly, a man with a broken tooth and a soft laugh, gone before spring. And then she writes about fear, the kind that sits in your stomach and grows roots, of being watched, of someone knowing what she hid in the crawl space, of whispers from behind the wardrobe. She ends the entry with one sentence. If I don't return tomorrow, let this be the truth. You sit with it for a long time. Later that night you read it again by candlelight. The ink looks different in the flicker, almost alive. The parchment smells like rosewater and thyme. You check the floorboard again, find another page, then another. By the fifth your hands are shaking. It's a diary, fragmented. Months of it. Not in order, not complete, but hers. Whoever she was, a girl who lived here, laughed here, was forgotten here. You don't tell the others, not yet. You want to know more first. You start collecting the pages, smoothing them flat, pressing them between books. You read them slowly, like unwrapping a body. She writes of little things, her favourite client, a lost ring, a song she only sang to herself. But she also writes about her plan, her escape. She had been saving, like you, watching, mapping the guards' habits, learning the city's rhythms. She writes about a friend on the outside, someone who owed her a favour, a place to stay near the water. The final entry reads, I go tonight. If I succeed, I'll come back for the others. If I don't, I hope someone finds this and remembers I tried. You stare at that sentence until the candle gutters. You don't sleep. The next day you ask Adele, carefully, if anyone ever left this room in the middle of the night. She frowns. You're not thinking of running, are you? No, you lie. Good, she says. That always ends badly. You nod, but your mind is still on the parchment hidden under your mattress. You finally tell Beatrice. She reads the pages in silence, her fingers trembling. When she's done, she whispers, I knew her. Your heart skips. You did? She was before you. Quiet girl. Strong eyes. Didn't talk much. Good with lace. Name was Colleen. That name hits you like a door closing. You remember a ribbon you once found stuffed in the back of your wardrobe, stitched with a tiny C at the corner? You thought it was for Celeste. Maybe it never was. She vanished, Beatrice says. Adele said she'd gone home, but that was a lie. No one heard from her again. You sit in seance. Beatrice pours you both tea. No words. The diary becomes your nightly ritual. A map of someone else's mind lined with fear and hope and ink smudges. You start responding in your own journal, not directly, not as letters, but as thoughts placed beside hers, side by side, as if the two of you were living in parallel time, brushing shoulders across the fabric of the house. And that's the strange historical fact for this section. There have been recovered journals buried in floorboards and between mattress frames, from brothels and boarding houses across Europe, most unsigned, most damaged, often dismissed as fiction. But some scholars believe they were real records, written by women who had no other place to put their truths, fragments of lives no one else wanted to remember. You wonder how many stories have been destroyed by fire, by shame, by indifference. How many Colleens? How many versions of you? You share the diary with Raina eventually. She reads it slowly, lips pursed. Did she make it? She asks. I don't know. Raina traces the final sentence with her fingertip. Maybe she did. Maybe the ones who make it never get remembered. You sit with that. There's comfort in imagining Colleen out there, living by the sea, cutting lace in the sun. But there's also the harder truth. She might not have made it. The city is cruel, the world is worse. Still, you know she lived, because you have her words. You press a dried violet between the last pages. For her, for you, for the next girl who finds it. It begins, as most rebellions do, with a coin, a single chipped silver coin, pressed into Raina's hand by a client who forgot the price. She holds it up to the light, squints and clicks her tongue. Half short, she says. You shrug. Let it go. He's old. She doesn't. She takes it to Adele, who frowns, counts, and dismisses it as close enough. Raina doesn't argue. Not at first. But you know that look. It's the one she gets when a thread has snapped somewhere deep inside her. By evening, the mood in the house is different. Tense, tighter. Then Solène is slapped. The client is drunk, laughing. The kind of laughter that's sharp and wet and smells like rotting grapes. He hits her because she refuses to take her dress off fast enough. She stumbles, catches herself on the vanity, and says nothing. Her cheek blooms purple. Adele bans him from the house, but Solène still bleeds. That night the whispers start. Raina, Beatrice, Solène and you, huddled around the kitchen fire, cups of tea turning cold in your hands. It's always the same, Raina says. They hit us, short us, take what they want, and we're expected to smile. You all nod, but slowly. I'm not smiling anymore, she says. She pulls the broken coin from her pouch and sets it on the table like a gauntlet. By morning, the whispers are louder. Girls speak without smiling. Tasks are done, but not with sweetness. Clients are served, but the laughter feels off. Adele notices. She asks you directly, "What's going on?" You lie. "We're tired." "Then rest faster," she says. But she knows. When Clarisse vanished and Lisette was named a witch, everyone went quiet. That was fear. But this new silence feels different. It's not hollow, it's full. Then Raina stops working altogether. She refuses 3 appointments in a row. She wears plain clothes, doesn't paint her lips, doesn't lace her boots. She sits in the hallway and braids herbs into the staircase banister. When Adele confronts her, Raina just says, "I don't accept broken currency." The room goes still. It escalates quickly after that. One by one, the other girls start pushing back, not loudly, not violently, just precisely. Solène insists on payment up front. Beatrice makes a list of banned clients, men who've bruised or lied or spat. When Adele protests, she folds her arms and says, "We have standards now." Adele laughs at first. "Until you all stop showing up for the high-paying brute known as the butcher." That's when she slams the ledger shut and announces, "You are employees, not judges." You reply, "Then let us earn like ones." There's a long, hard silence. Then she says, "Don't be ridiculous. This is not a tavern. You don't unionize in silk." And that's when Beatrice, sweet, sarcastic Beatrice, says it. "We'll strike." It hangs in the air like smoke. No one laughs, because it's not a joke. Striking as a concept isn't unheard of. In fact, there are historical records, real ones, of sex workers organising in medieval cities. The most famous was in 15th century Paris, when prostitutes walked out for 3 days after the city doubled their fines and taxed their madams. The city panicked. Coin dried up, order collapsed. The women won. Another rebellion happened in Venice, where the state tried to ban bright clothing for prostitutes. In protest, the women dyed their sheets red and paraded them through the canals. History forgets these things, but you don't. Adele doesn't take it seriously, at first, until none of you show up for the work the next night. Every room is dark, every bed is cold, clients knock, you don't answer. Adele's fee turns hard as iron. "This is suicide," she hisses. "You think the church won't crush you, that the city will let this stand?" But you're already standing. Raina leads the charge, standing at the front door in her plain brown dress, arms crossed, hair loose. "You want us," she says, "then treat us like more than linen." Adele threatens to evict you all. Beatrice replies, "Then good luck running the house alone." The next day, guards arrive. But not for you, for the man who struck Solène. Someone, maybe Adele, maybe a client with a conscience, reported him. It doesn't erase the bruise, but it matters. After 2 days, Adele caves. A new rule is written in the ledger. All coin must be counted. All appointments must be agreed upon. Clients with 3 complaints are banned. You're not free, but you've made a crack in the wall. You can breathe again. That night, you light candles in the hallway. Each girl places something beside them. A ribbon, a coin, a name written in ink, for Clarice, for Lisette, for the ones who didn't get to push back. You stand together in silence, not because you're broken, but because you finally remember you're not alone. The guards arrive again, but this time they don't knock. It's dawn, barely, and the sun is just a smear of gold behind the mist. You're dozing in the corner of the common room, half wrapped in a blanket, when the sound of boots on the stone floor jars you upright. They don't even shout, just move in, swift and quiet, as if they've done this before, as if the walls of the brothel mean nothing at all. There are 4 of them. Leather tunics, swords, no smiles. One of them reads from a scroll, but you barely hear it over the pounding in your ears. Something about unauthorized gatherings, about disrupting the peace. You look around and realize every girl is here, frozen. Raina's hand tightens around her teacup until the porcelain cracks. Adele appears from the hallway, robe cinched, hair wild, and for the first time since you've known her, she looks terrified. "You have no right," she says. The tallest guard holds up the scroll and this says otherwise. He hands it to her. The seal is real. The signature too. The bishop's. And just like that, it all shifts. You'd been foolish to think the rebellion would go unnoticed. To think that denying powerful men their pleasures wouldn't provoke them. You struck a match in the dark and expected no one to notice the flame. Now the church has noticed. The guards don't touch any of you. Not yet. They take notes instead, ask questions, measure door frames, count how many beds are in the house, how many girls, they demand names. You give them fake ones, of course, every one of you does. But that won't hold long. By midday they're gone. Just vanished. Leaving behind the echo of boots and a fresh stain of fear. You watch them from the window as they walk back toward the cathedral. 2 of them laugh. You wonder if they're laughing at you. That evening, Adele gathers you all in the parlour. There's no fire. She stands by the window, arms folded, and says one thing. "No more rebellion. It ends now." No one speaks. She adds, "If you don't fall in line, this house will be shut. You'll be exiled. Or worse." Solène finally speaks. "They're coming for us anyway." "They're coming faster now," Adele snaps. "You think I don't know how this ends? You think I've never seen a brothel burn to ash? I've scrubbed the soot off the stones where girls were murdered for less." Her voice cracks, and suddenly she looks old, tired, not powerful, just someone trying to keep the roof from collapsing. Beatrice stands up. "Then let them come." You almost cry from how brave it sounds, but the truth is it terrifies you. Because Beatrice is right, and so is Adele. The house is under a magnifying glass now. The city wants to make an example. The church smells smoke and calls it sin. You are not girls anymore. You are targets, symbols, something to punish to prove a point. That night you sit with Raina by the fire. She pulls her journal from beneath the cushion and tears out 3 pages, then one by one she feeds them into the flame. "I'm not letting them have my story," she says. You watch the paper curl and blacken. You feel the same impulse clawing at your throat. To erase, to disappear, to survive by becoming invisible again. You dig out Colleen's journal, press it flat, whisper her name, promise to remember her even if you burn everything else. You don't sleep. Instead, you write. You copy down every rule you've been forced to follow, every price you've been told to smile through, every name of every client who's left bruises behind. You make a ledger of your own. Because if they come for you, let them see everything. Here's your historical thread for the night. In 14th century London, brothels operated under what were called customary rules, guidelines that governed behaviour and payment, often enforced by the city or church. But when these were abused or ignored, some women created their own rulebooks. Secret, fragmented, hidden under floorboards. A few have been found, written in a mix of French, Latin, and the local tongue. Angry, elegant, sometimes obscene, a kind of paper resistance. Yours is not elegant, but it's honest. You hide your ledger under the mattress. Solène hides hers inside a hollowed-out book of psalms. Beatrice just keeps hers strapped to her leg, wrapped in oilskin. By the third day, the guards return, but this time they don't ask questions. They arrest Adele. No explanation, no crime listed. Just the bishop's seal and the quiet insistence that she has permitted disorder. They drag her out through the back door while you all watch from the top of the stairs. She doesn't scream, doesn't fight, just turns back once and says, "Keep your heads down." You don't. You bury her name into your ledger. Beatrice spits on the floor once they're gone. Raina lights a candle in the window. Just one. It's a signal, she says. For what, she won't tell you. The house is without leadership now. Without protection, without even the illusion of safety. But you've seen this before. You've seen girls walk through fire. You've seen them stitch their own wings. You look around and realise, for the first time, you're not waiting for someone else to save you. The church has made it clear. You are not welcome here. So what's left? You make a plan, you gather the girls in the laundry room, far from windows, far from ears, and you talk, not about clients, not about prices, but about roots. About names you can trust, about who has saved what, about who has the key to the side gate. The side gate. You remember it from when you first arrived. It sticks when it rains, rusted through. But it leads to the back alley, and from there, to anywhere. No one says the word escape, not yet, but it's in every breath, in every whispered map, in every stolen coin, in every vow to each other. No one gets left behind. You spend the next 3 days moving like a shadow. Every step you take, every glance over your shoulder is weighed down with the knowledge that you're no longer just surviving inside a brothel. You're plotting an escape from it. The kind of thing that, if spoken too loudly, could have your name added to a church scroll marked rebellious, wicked to be removed. You wear your silence like a second dress. The plan, if you can even call it that, comes together in the quiet. In coded glances across the dining table, in notes passed beneath teacups. In laundry days that last a little too long. Each of you takes a piece of the puzzle. Solène watches the alley from the window behind the parlour. Raina handles supplies, bread, soap, bandages, coins hidden in the lining of her bodice. Beatrice finds the locksmith. He's a boy. Can't be more than 16. Grimy and quick-fingered, with a laugh too loud for this kind of work. But he's smart. And when he holds up the rusted skeleton key that once belonged to Adele and turns it in his palm, he just grins and says, "Give me 2 nights." You pray he means it. The house, meanwhile, begins to shrink. Without Adele, it folds in on itself. The upstairs rooms are cold, the kitchen runs short, the guards don't visit, but their shadow hangs in the air like smoke. The clients have dwindled to a trickle. Only the boldest or most desperate still show up. And even they glance over their shoulders more than usual. The word is out. The brothel is tainted, unruly, marked. Raina says it's because women who talk are more dangerous than women who undress. You believe her. One night you gather in your room, just 4 of you now. Raina, Beatrice, Solène, and you. The others have faded into silence or suspicion. Some may be spies. You don't know anymore who you can trust beyond this room. Beatrice spreads a map across the mattress. A crude thing inked on the back of a ruined bedsheet. "This is the alley, ho," she says, tapping the edge. "Here's the old bakery, abandoned, but it's dry. And here," she draws a faint line with her finger, "here's the gate." "The locksmith?" you ask. "Tomorrow," she says, and that's when it shifts from maybe to real. You're not just talking about escape anymore. You're preparing for it. You each have a pack, small enough to carry under a shawl. Inside yours, 2 linen shifts, a loaf of dry bread, a dagger that once belonged to a client too drunk to notice it was gone. You run your fingers over its hilt every night before bed. It steadies you. And still there's the ledger. Your ledger. You don't know if you should take it. It's too heavy. Too honest. Too you. Raina says to burn it. Beatrice says to bury it. You do neither. You wrap it in cloth and tie it to the inside of your pack. If you die in the woods outside the city, let someone at least know who you were. The locksmith returns 2 nights later. His face is pale. "They've noticed the gate," he whispers. You've got one night. Then they'll lock it from the outside. Beatrice doesn't blink. Then we go tonight. No one argues. There's no time for speeches, no candles, no last-minute wine, just fast hands and shallow breaths. You pull on your simplest dress, dark, shapeless. You wrap your pack tight to your body, tie your hair back, and kiss the edge of your mattress once, not for sentiment, for goodbye. You wait until the bell tolls midnight. Then you move. Out the kitchen, past the ashes of yesterday's fire, down the hallway where Lisette used to hum, past Clarice's room, door open, mattress bare, through the pantry, past the jars of dried lentils and forgotten herbs, into the alley. The city is asleep mostly. A few cats dart across the cobblestones. Somewhere in the distance a drunk sings to himself. The moon is low, yellow, wide as a broken coin. Your feet are silent. The gate is there. The key fits, but it sticks. Raina hisses, "Come on." You hear footsteps in the street behind you, not close, but not far. Solène is crying, quiet and hard. Beatrice steps forward, kicks the bottom hinge once, twice. The gate groans like a waking beast, then, click. It opens. You don't cheer, you run, through the gate down the alley, across the courtyard of the old bakery. You don't look back, you don't dare. You hear nothing behind you except the scrape of boots and the gasp of lungs. You keep running, past the bakery, past the dying vines crawling up the old friary, past the broken statue of St. Jerome, face chipped, arms outstretched, and then you're in the trees, outside the city, outside the life. You collapse near the first bend in the trail, lungs on fire, mouth full of metal. Raina falls beside you. Solène vomits into the bushes. Beatrice just laughs. You did it. You're out. You don't know what comes next. You don't know where you'll sleep, whether your coins will last, whether the church will come after you, whether someone will slit your throat for your boots. But you know this, you are no longer property. You are no longer ledger-bound. You are no longer surviving in someone else's story. You are living in your own. Here's the historical whisper for tonight. Some women did make it out. Some found lives beyond the walls, not as saints, not as lovers, but as midwives, herbalists, tavern owners, even quiet widows with no need to explain themselves. Their stories are hard to find, buried, raised, but they are there. You're one of them now. One more name the city will pretend not to remember. But you'll remember every step, every bruise, every flame. Dawn breaks slow like it's afraid to touch you. You've spent the night huddled beneath an overturned cart, wrapped in the musty remains of what used to be a merchant's cloak. The dirt is cold. Your legs ache. Beatrice is snoring beside you, curled like a cat. Raina hasn't slept at all. Her eyes are wide open, scanning the trees, listening for footsteps that never come. Solène is still crying, though it's quiet now, the kind of crying that no longer wants comfort. You've made it out. That part is real, but the world beyond the walls isn't made of gold and freedom. It's made of mud, and silence, and birds that shriek too early. You lie there in the half-light, blinking up at the branches, and ask yourself, not for the first time, now what? Because no one tells you what comes after the escape. Not the poets, not the whispering girls, not even the ledger pages you tucked into your bag like a lifeline. They all end with the running, the fleeing, the cracked gate, the broken chain, the gasp of new air. Not with this, not with 4 women in torn dresses, faces smeared with soot, sitting in a field like lost children. You sit up slowly, your bones complain. Raina looks over. "We need to move," she says. "Where?" you ask. "East, away from the road, find the river." You nod like you understand. But you don't. You've never travelled more than 6 streets from the brothel. You don't know where the river is, you don't know where you are. Still you follow. You walk, past hedgerows, past cows that moo at you like gods, past a scarecrow that looks suspiciously like a man who gave up trying. By midday your feet are blistered and your head is pounding. The bread in your pack is already stale. Solène trips twice and Beatrice snaps at her. Not unkindly. You're not made of glass. The road curves, trees thin. You see smoke in the distance, not the dark, choking kind of fire, but the thin grey plume of a cooking hearth. A cottage. Raina halts you with one raised hand. "Let me go first," she says. She walks ahead. Knocks once, then again. An old woman opens the door. She looks Raina up and down, squints at the rest of you, trailing behind like ghosts, and says only, "Well, you're not bandits." An hour later, you're seated on a bench made of split log, sipping something that might be soup or might be boiled roots. You don't care. It's warm. The woman doesn't ask questions, doesn't demand coin. She just watches you with one eye sharper than a knife and says, "Rest tonight, then go. You'll bring trouble if you linger." You nod. She's not wrong. You sleep on her floor, all four of you under one heavy wool blanket. For a moment, it's almost like the brothel again, sharing a room, breathing in unison. Warmth pressed between bodies. But it's different too. There's no work waiting in the morning, no performance, just the weight of the road. You dream of Adele. She's standing at the top of the staircase holding a ledger, but when she opens it, it's empty. She says, "Make your own book." You wake up crying. By sunrise, the woman gives you a crust of bread and a boiled egg each. "Head east," she says, "past the second mill. There's a widow who hires girls to help with the dyeing vats." Works hard, but she doesn't ask questions. You thank her. Beatrice leaves a silver coin on the bench. The next 3 days blur. You walk. You sleep in ditches and under hedges. Once, a fox watches you from the brush, its eyes glowing like twin stars. You talk less now. Every word feels expensive. Raina starts mapping your journey with a bit of charcoal on the inside of her boot. On the 4th day, you reach the mill. It stinks of wet cloth and iron. The widow is there, stern, tall, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She eyes you all like livestock, but she nods once and says, "I've had worse." She gives you rooms in a lean-to, rough cot stuffed with straw. You start working the next morning. It's brutal. Hot dye, heavy linens, skin that burns and peels from the chemicals. But it's honest. No men with coin in their fists, no forced smiles. Just your own 2 hands, blistered and real. You work, you eat, you sleep, you are alive. One night, Raina leans against the dye vat and says, "This isn't the end." You nod. It's the middle. She smiles. Beatrice teaches the local girls how to defend themselves with a comb. Solène finds a dog and feeds it scraps until it won't leave her side. You keep writing, not just notes now, but whole pages. You write the story of the brothel, of the escape, of the cracked gate and the broken coin and the candle in the window. You write Colleen's name, Lisette's, Clarisse's, Adele's. You write your real name at the top of the page, for the first time in years, and here's your last historical note. Somewhere in a monastery archive near Avignon, there's a page from a girl who ran. It doesn't say much, just her name, her trade, and a list of others she remembered. It ends with the phrase, "We were not all sinners, some of us were simply human, no one knows who she was." But someone once took the time to copy her page. So maybe she mattered. You keep writing, because one day, someone will read this, and maybe they'll see the women you loved, the house you fled, the ledger you rewrote. Maybe they'll whisper your names to the stars, not as saints, not as whores, but as survivors. And that, yes, that is holy enough. Time passes, and with it the sharp edges begin to dull. Not completely. You still flinch when boots echo too loud on a stone floor. You still scan faces in the marketplace, expecting to see someone from your old life, someone who shouldn't be there. You still wake some nights with the scent of red wine and fear in your nose, but the screaming has quieted, the bruises have faded, and slowly, piece by piece, you build something new. You never go back, not once, not even to check. The city becomes a shape on the horizon, a place you once inhabited but now refer to as there, like it's a country in a bad story. No one mentions it, really. What would be the point? Beatrice gets a job cutting fabric for a seamstress. She's good at it. Sharp eyes. Steady hands. She flirts with a tanner's son who brings her fresh gloves. He doesn't ask about her past. She doesn't offer it. Solène takes to healing. Sabine's old tricks, passed down in whispers, come back to life in her hands. She mixes her own balms now, grows lavender in a little wooden crate. People come to her door with sprained wrists, sore throats and broken hearts. She listens. She never charges. Raina never stops moving. She disappears for weeks at a time, travelling between villages, carrying news, sometimes letters. She's become a courier of sorts, but not just for words. She brings stories, whispers, warnings, names of girls in danger. She delivers them like prayers. And you? You keep writing. The book grows heavier with every page, but you don't stop. You collect names, fragments, bits of history no one else wants. You write them all down. Some days will be a girl you barely remember will appear in your dreams. Lisette, smiling behind her wineglass. Clarisse, mouthing the lyrics to a song with no tune. You write them too. One morning you wake to find a girl sitting on the steps of your cottage. She looks about 16, dirty, silent, clutching a ribbon. She doesn't say where she came from. You recognise the look in her eyes. So you make her tea and you add her name to the list. Oh, because history forgets so easily. But you won't. You've seen what happens when voices vanish, when girls are silenced, erased, rewritten by men who never knew them. You've seen how easy it is to be turned into a cautionary tale, or worse, into nothing at all. So you do the most radical thing possible. You remember. You keep remembering. Because your story, the one no one ever asked for, the one built in back rooms and whispered down corridors, is real. It lived, it mattered, and it still does. So tonight, if you're lying in the dark, just listening to the wind, know this. The girls made it out. Maybe not all. Maybe not the way the world wanted. But some carved their names into the earth with bare hands and stubborn hearts. Some became more than shadows. Some built new homes. Some healed. And you here now, you know their story, which means they're still alive, right there, in the quiet, in the dark, in the pages of the book.